You're listening to Find the Good News, Episode 32, The Wax Apple, featuring Diana Vallette. This episode of Find the Good News is sponsored by Parker Brand Creative Services, a branding agency that thinks sideways, pushes forward, and gets your brand up. Check out our work at parkerbrandup.com. Next week's episode features my high school speech teacher, Alita Barnes. We had a conversation that I never thought I'd get to have. She's the person that I wish every teenager could have been mentored by. She really has something special. I knew it then, and I know it now. She changed my life, and I think you'll get a lot out of our conversation as we revisit some old memories, discuss how the things she taught us are still relevant today, just like they were all those years ago. It's really good stuff. Following that, I'll have Jeremy Boudreau, Devin Morgan, and Rustin Havens. 3 really good conversations with local guys doing some great things in the community. Make sure you tune in for those episodes as well. I'm having the visit for the mixtape episode this week. You've heard me talking about this one for a few episodes, and you've probably been seeing the posts on social media as well. I really can't wait to have this visit with these past good newsies. This is going to be so much fun. I really enjoyed talking to each of those people individually, so to have everybody back at the same table is just going to be a blast. I'll keep you posted on a launch date for that first mixtape episode. I've wrapped the first road trip episode as well. If you'll give Find the Good News a follow on Facebook or Instagram, I'll be posting more information about that episode there. I really do appreciate all the feedback I receive from you guys on social media and on the hotline, so keep it coming. You can call that Good News Listener hotline at 802-459-1668. That's 802-459-1668. You can also text me at that number. You can get in touch with me on the website as well at findthegood.news, and I always keep all of the episodes posted there too. If you're not really sure what podcast platform you want to listen to, you can just go to the website and listen to each episode there. I can't overstate just how important it is to get your reviews on your favorite podcast app. Wherever you're listening to Find the Good News, take a minute to like it, rate it, and subscribe to it. It doesn't take long, and it really helps get the show out to more people. Another way you can help keep the show free is to use one of our advertisers. If you do, let them know you heard about them on Find the Good News. As always, thank you for lending me your ears, minds, and hearts. I've got a really deep episode in store for you this time, so let's settle in and press play on a little good news. I don't think Diana Vallette knew that she was one of the many inspirations behind Find the Good News. How could she? We'd never met face to face, and we didn't really know each other all that well. I'd been watching Diana's activity online for quite a while before asking her to visit with me, and I was intrigued by this person who was so willing to share their spiritual journey. Who was this Catholic woman that was making these really personal videos, sharing her inner thoughts, questions, concerns, insecurities, and doubts? After doing a bit of digging, what I discovered was a woman whose testimony revealed she had been an atheist, living in a framework that outlined any kind of God or creator as a fictional story that adults like to tell themselves, not all that different from the Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy, or Santa Claus. A narrative that had been imprinted on her as a child. Like all children do, Diana grew up and eventually grew out of atheism and into a relationship with God. I might be wrong, but I believe that it was her doubt and insecurities about her creator that has actually created her ability to reach people the way she does. Diana is on a path of authentic discovery, and what it seems she's discovered is a way to approach friendship with God in a humble, authentic way, and she's been called to share what she's learned with others. That path isn't always smooth or pretty. She doesn't pretend to be a bright and shiny Catholic that has all the answers. She presents herself plainly and without a veil. She is showing other seekers that you can approach the Creator in doubt, fear, worry, and confusion. She's found an embrace waiting on the other side of all those things. She's been called to speak, to write, to share, even though she's clearly been terrified to do any of those things. Regardless, she has stepped out front anyway, and she's sometimes taken the heat that comes with it. Her willingness to share encouraged me to share many things that I've kept to myself, things I've doubted, things I've feared. I share them for the same reason that she does, in the hope that by sharing the truth it will motivate another to find a spiritual path. I highly value people that allow themselves to be seen as they are. We need more of that in this world. By revealing our true faces, we can have more authentic relationships. This is the face God sees, And if we're being honest with ourselves, it's the face we recognize too, though we may fear showing it to the world. Diana Vallette is touching people by putting her true face forward, and there are very real, very good fruits to be picked from what she is growing.
Wake up, it's morning. You're dreaming up a story. I can hear the way it's going, 'cause you're laughing in your sleep, on the path to your deliverance, and a holy wall of light pouring through your window.
Old news, bad news, fake news. Sometimes you just want to shut it all down and get no news at all. With Find the Good News, I aim to change that by focusing on good people doing good work. I visit with artists, educators, civic and spiritual leaders, musicians, business owners, students, volunteers, and everyday citizens who are using their creativity, resources, and talents to bring hope and happiness to their corner of the world. In each episode, I dig into the hearts and minds of my extraordinary guests. We have street-level conversations about relatable things going on in their lives. Discover the critical life experiences that shape them, the perspectives that drive them, and the fundamental beliefs that are anchoring them to a path of goodness. There's a lot of news in the world. My name is Oran Parker, and I'm going to find the good.
And I love you just as well.
I do my intros mostly in the morning. When the morning, my voice is like this because my vocal cords haven't warmed up.
Oh, gotcha.
But if I do it after I close, because I like to do it when it's quiet, and it's either before we open or when we close, my voice will be warmed up and it'll be more like bright and
yeah.
So
When you first started, did you feel like you had to be like, and here's the Oran? Did you feel like
I struggled with that. That's actually true. That's an interesting question. I don't have a problem talking, openly and freely. I do like to take a pause sometimes and make sure I'm saying what I think I'm saying. But I struggled with whether I should write things down and read them or just talk, because podcasts that I like to listen to is a little bit more loose. The person just starts talking and they're just going and they go and I really enjoy that. But then what changed my mind about it was I started listening to Mike Rowe's podcast.
I don't know him.
Yeah, Mike Rowe, Dirty Jobs. Remember this show, Dirty Jobs? Yeah. Well, he has a great podcast called The Way I Heard It.
Okay.
And so what he does is he writes these beautiful, I guess you call them in the cracks of history. Yeah. And so he tells you these stories, and they're all written, but the way he reads them, there's this cadence to his voice. And ultimately what it is at the end of the story, he kind of sums it all up and reveals who he was talking about.
Oh, so you don't know the whole time. So
you don't know, and then you go, oh my gosh, and it's like this big light bulb goes off. That was Nikola Tesla, or this was one of the astronauts in one of the cool. Landers or something, an obscure story, and it's all written. And I just thought, I like that because it's clean, and he's put some energy into it. So that's why we do the intro. I'd say we. Yeah. That's why I chose to do that. But we are going to change the format a little bit. I've been talking about it with them here, and I'm going to start doing announcements at the front end, because there's a lot of things that I've just sort of slipped through the cracks, like our hotline. We have the hotline and we've had one or two calls, but what happens is I post the episode after the fact and I don't promote the person ahead of them coming on.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And so we're switching that up a little bit. I'm going to start promoting my next guests per podcast. That way
in
people
the hopes
can
that
call.
People will.
Yeah, because those hotlines, I've had a few texts and messages that have been emailed that I put in the fishbowl. Do you know about the fishbowl?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've heard about the fishbowl.
It's exciting. It's fun.
Yeah, I saw, I guess I saw a social media post that you did where there was a couple questions pulled from the fishbowl.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's socialism. I was like, oh, he gets serious.
That blew my mind. I didn't even know that was in there. I really haven't read every question. You know? Most of them I have, but that one surprised me. And the guest and I who talked about it, neither of us are qualified to really have that conversation. But it was really good to understand that, to see where the limits of your knowledge lie, Yeah. So anyway, that's about me, and this is about you. And we're actually rolling, so...
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we've already started. I have no idea where this is going to go today.
I love it. That's my favorite kind of conversation.
Yeah, me too.
Because like I feel like every conversation with me though, like even if you think you know where it's going to go, I'm not great. How you said that you did a good job of trying to make sure that what you're saying is what you're trying to say. I'm not great at that.
Well,
like,
maybe
things
that's your
just
gift.
Fly out.
I like that though. That seems to be your style, and not that it's maybe a developed style, but it's just who you are.
It's who I've always been, but I've fought against for so long just because I wanted to be well thought of, and now I've realized that it puts people more at ease. Like other people feel more comfortable in that.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna go with it.
That we can stop right there and talk about that, what you just said, being well thought of.
Yeah.
So you're letting that go.
I mean,
right?
I would like to,
but you're trying.
I'm trying, and most of the time I fail because I struggle with that so much. But so for example, my daughter went to this private school in the area, and anytime I would go to the school for anything, like to drop off cookies or whatever moms do, I would leave there and I would cry just because I felt so out of place and just crappy. And like I wasn't, and it wasn't anybody, no one was doing anything to make me feel like that. Yeah, that was like internalized. And so now that my kids are homeschooled, not because of that, but and so I realized whenever I walked away from that situation that anytime I would enter a room with people, I had an immense amount of anxiety, and like I spent the whole entire time worried and just didn't want to be there, even though I'm super outgoing and extroverted. And it was because I was spending all my time worrying about what people were thinking. Mm-hmm. And so I've kind of now made the effort, and I've seen the fruits of whenever I enter a room, my job is to make other people feel comfortable. And I've kind of forgotten myself in that, and I'm okay with looking like an idiot and sticking out. Mm-hmm. And then that makes other people feel comfortable, and then you're now forgotten that you feel like an anxious ball of nerves.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I get that. I get a lot of that. I dealt with social anxiety debilitating for years. I mean, I would say a decade and a half or longer. I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I worried about so much. Now, I wasn't very good at limping through it.
Yeah.
So to speak, you know.
So what did you do? Just hide?
Hide. You know, like I would find ways to get out of having to go into situations. There's several. I mean, I could go on and on about that. I mean, as you start to reflect on things. And honestly, if I'm being 100% truthful, I'll probably still do that today.
Yeah.
Because even getting into faith and religion and spirituality, things like that, I do that still. I mean, that's partly where this is an interesting exercise for me, because this is a safe space, right?
Yeah.
And the more we do it, the more it becomes a safe space. So I can expose myself here in a safer way, even if it's somebody where I have, you know, opposing viewpoints, because the precedent has been set that it's safe to talk.
Right.
But if I go into, let's say, a Bible study, random, I see, you know, you people put church signs out for a reason, right?
Yeah.
Bible study this Friday. They don't put them out for the people that are already there. They put them out for people like me who are driving down the road and go, hey, maybe I'll just go check this out.
Right.
Well, that's not a safe space.
No.
And so I might go there.
Rules out there.
Right. I wouldn't enter that and fully expose and start asking all the questions I have, or challenge ideas or anything. So yeah, I mean, I still do it. I mean, because I would love to go to a Bible study.
Yeah.
But I'm afraid to go to a Bible study, right? And it's so that's that anxiety of, you know, do I think what they think? Do I believe what they believe? What if I say something that's not in full alignment with whatever the bylaws and laws of this particular,
right?
You know, so yeah, I have those fears still inside, and they definitely are steering my rudder out there in the world.
I think for me, like, everywhere is that safe space. And not because I feel like the world is like needs my opinions or whatever, but just because I feel like whenever you are just exactly who you are and you say exactly what you feel, you're inviting other people to do that, and and now, like, if I go out into the world, right, and my kids are acting a fool at Walmart and they're embarrassing me, and I am accepting that, and I'm embracing it and not trying to hide it, probably some people will think like, wow, she sucks. But there will be other people that look at that and say, wow, this person's going through that. I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
I'm not alone.
Yeah, I get you. No, you're right. I think exposure is really healthy.
Yeah.
I really do, because I think people have this sort of little manufacturing plant inside of themselves.
Yeah.
You know, and there's all these bottles just going down the assembly line, getting filled all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and they're all fragile and they're all made of glass, and they just keep stacking them up in some warehouse, and eventually you stack it so high stuff falls over and just spills everywhere. And so I
Yeah.
feel like without some exposure, that's what's really going on. You know, we're just hiding these little bottles of poison in there, just tucking them away for them to catch us later.
Yeah.
You know, becomes like an insurmountable thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, exposure invites, you're right, the invitation.
And I didn't, it wasn't like a conscious effort. Like, I have this friend, her name is Jessica, and she won't mind that I say her name.
Okay.
She's so awesome. But I have this friend who kind of lives that. Like, she leads with, hey, I'm a normal person with brokenness, and I'm all messed up, and listen to this mistake I made. And she tells funny stories about how her kid wandered out into the parking lot at Target and thank God was found by somebody she, you know, stuff like that. And she doesn't reserve those types of things for a certain trusted group. She leads with that, and that is what is so alluring about her. You just want to be around her because you feel at home. And so I think being friends with her specifically has unlocked that part of me, just because, man, that's like what humanity is all about. Like, just, we're all the same.
Yeah.
All of us.
We arise from the same source.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's something that really ought to be a beautiful thing. Celebrating that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's hard for us, though, for some reason.
Yeah.
Not us. I'm not saying you and me, but I think just as a species, for some reason.
Like the idea that we're all the same, you mean?
Yeah. It's hard for us to celebrate that we're the same but different.
Yeah.
That's very difficult.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, wars are fought over it.
Yeah.
People are killed and persecuted, shunned. Doesn't make any sense. I don't know where it comes from. I mean, well, that's a conversation in itself. Where does that come from?
Yeah.
Actually, where does that come from?
Where does it?
Yeah, like division. Where does that come from for you? I mean, like in your worldview, that you live in. Where do you think that starts? Because I mean, we all have it. I mean, I'm listening to just what you said. You kind of already are. You've outlined that you maybe even have some of that in you. I've got some of that in me. I mean, you go into private school to drop your children off, and you go outside and cry.
Yeah.
Why are you crying? There's a division in you.
Yeah.
Right? That says you're different. Possibly you don't belong, maybe.
Well, I think there's like a certain part of us that automatically lines up the word different with the word bad.
Yeah.
So we don't feel comfortable with people. There's a certain amount of difference that we're cool with. Like, you know, you like coffee, I like tea. That's cool.
Yeah.
I'll go with that. But there's certain lines of division where it's so different that we forget the dignity of the other because we're so different. Now, you are no longer good because you are other than me, and I am good, quote unquote, right?
Right.
And that, I think that it's that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been looking for that. I think my adult life, and I see it in places and in people. I don't know that I've ever seen it. I guess my big dream is to find it in a group.
To find what?
To find that kind of love that breaks through the boundary of the other and the difference. Something where I can see a collection of thinking that still has people who think differently, and celebrate themselves differently, but at the same time
but does it have to be a group out there? Like, why don't you make the group?
Well, no, I mean, that's a good question. That is a good question. I mean, if I'm being honest, I've kind of tried before.
Really?
Yeah, and I get a little bit discouraged. It's something I wrote down I want to talk to you about, actually, is discouragement. Because you're sticking yourself out there versus not. So why put yourself out there instead of not putting yourself out there the way you do?
That's a good question. I think I had a conversion experience about 5 years ago. So 5 years ago, I didn't believe there was a God.
Oh,
At
stop
all.
right there. I want to hear all about that.
Okay, I can talk about that for 3 hours. I didn't believe there was a God at all. So my parents are doctors. They met in medical school, super smart people. And they're Hispanic. So we were culturally Catholic. In the
Gotcha.
fact that when you're born, you get baptized.
Yeah.
But I don't know that there was much thought behind that or much because of the Lord.
You
or
just did
Jesus.
it culturally. It was a part, you do it, and this is the way it is. Okay.
Exactly. And then I grew up in Ville Platte. And
Okay.
Ville Platte is a small town, and they have 2 major schools there. And the one that has the better educational aspect of it is the Catholic school. So I
Okay.
went to the Catholic school.
Gotcha.
And I received my sacraments. Apart from that, like, there was no belief.
So you didn't really, going through that process as a child, as something that was just a part of your life, you didn't feel anything. It wasn't like you're just doing it because you're doing it.
Exactly.
Mom and dad says to do it. Culture says to do it. I'm doing it.
Exactly. And apart from that, there were some people in my environment, so people that I was in school with, who were devout Catholics in a way that was attractive to me, but they were very few. So
Okay.
I have a friend whose sister is a nun, and her family just is so joyful. And I knew there was something different there than there was like in my home or even in my other friends' homes. But at the time, I didn't know it was that. I didn't know it was that they were rooted in Christ, and I didn't know it was that. So sometimes I would try, I would try to like just fake it till I made it, but it
Yeah.
never really was a thing. So I didn't really believe in God. I remember one time my dad told me, he's super smart. I think he wishes that he had unwavering faith, but he just doesn't. And he told me that God was like Santa Claus for adults.
He told you that.
He did.
He said those words to you.
Those words.
Wow.
And we talked about it recently.
How
He's
old
like,
were you?
You know, oh man, I must have been like in middle school or high school, I guess.
Man, so that's...
My parents are super open. I mean, my dad's a gynecologist. So my parents, they were just like really open people. And they just said things.
There weren't taboo subjects.
No, zero
Our
taboo.
family's that way, too.
Not even, I mean, like my husband is like, there should have been a few taboos. And I'm like, nope, there was none. So he said things like that to me, and I looked at him as like the smartest person I've ever known. Still probably, he's super smart. And so whenever he said God is like Santa Claus for adults, like if you are good, then you get presents, and if you're not good, then you don't. That meant something to me. That meant that people that believed in God were probably idiots.
You
because-
did the math.
Yeah.
That right? That statement from somebody that you trust.
Yeah.
And think highly of.
For sure.
Sticks.
And
That
then
is the equation.
For sure. And then I went to college, and I was rooted in that. Now it was my own belief. It wasn't just what my parents said or what I experienced. But I was married to that. Like, people who believe are idiots, or they're lying about believing because they think it's the right thing to do. And so
Right.
I sat with that for a while till I met my husband, who grew up cradle Catholic,
Okay.
whose mom taught CCD. He wasn't really going to church or anything, but he knew there was a God. He believed there was a God. So we didn't really talk about it much. I was smart enough to know that living in the South as a woman, it wasn't necessarily like the most attractive thing to be an atheist. So I would say things like, I don't have to go to church to be close to God.
Yeah.
I never said-
Spiritualism, which is like, yeah.
Right. I never
get
said
that.
I don't believe in God.
Yeah.
That felt like that was, I mean, on the internet I'd get into arguments with people, behind the curtain or whatever.
Right.
Even like, I mean, it's so crazy to think about how much can change. Even I remember having arguments with people about abortion on the internet. Yeah. I remember when I was like in 6th grade or something.
At that age, huh?
In 6th grade, we had an assignment at our Catholic school to write a paper about abortion, and if it's okay and if it's not okay. I don't remember the exact thing, but it was about abortion. So I wrote this paper about how abortion is okay in these certain situations, and if the woman, and I brought it to my mom, and my mom was like, no, we can't turn this into the Catholic school. We're going to have to change this. And she wasn't like, your thoughts are wrong, or let's talk about abortion, because my parents have always been really open. But she was like, that's not okay. That paper's not okay in that place.
Yeah, right. And that cuts right back to what you're talking. I mean, yeah, the division there. Okay?
Yeah.
So now you're not safe to express the thought, so the thought stays inside in a bottle somewhere and grows its own little tendrils, in the dark.
Exactly. So I met my husband, and we had our first 2 kids. We were married and everything. And he started really expressing to me that it was important to him that his kids grew up in the church, going to church every Sunday. And I would give him excuses and say, like, I don't feel close to God in church and blah, 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 and whatever. Until one day he was like, okay, let's make a deal. Every Sunday we'll go out to Mass, and then after Mass we'll go to lunch. And I'm like, lunch? Okay, that sounds wonderful. There's lunch involved? I can for sure, I can get behind this. So we did that. We did that for months and months. And I went every week to Mass. I sat in the pew and stood up, and I received communion, and I did all the stuff that you're supposed to do. But I was in it for the lunch.
Gotcha.
And it's crazy, just as a quick tangent, it's crazy how I think Catholics, or maybe I shouldn't speak for all Catholics, I think me as a Catholic, I sometimes believe that, like, God is bound. I get it twisted. I think, like, God is bound by the rules of the Catholic Church. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
So I'm receiving communion, which for those of you who are listening who don't know, Catholics believe that communion is truly Jesus Christ's body, blood, soul, and divinity. Okay, and we believe that if you're going to receive that, then you need to be in some sort of state of grace. And in order to achieve that state of grace, you have to have confessed your mortal sins, your serious sins. So when I was going to Mass on these Sundays, I wasn't confessing any mortal sins. Like, I didn't even think I needed to confess any sins, or that I was even like a sin. Like, I got to decide what was wrong and what was right for me. So I would go to communion, right? And any Catholic will tell you, like, that's terrible to do. And so to receive communion in the state of mortal grace. And so where we get confused, we're
in sulfur.
Where we get confused is that I think if you ask anybody, like, okay, well, what I was doing was so terribly wrong. But what I was doing, I firmly believe the terrible wrong thing by the church's standards is what led to the conversion. I believe that God used that messed up thing to really flood me with grace. Because one day, after several months of going to church, I was walking out with my kids. My kids were like 3 and 1 at the time, and they were both melting down, and it was hot, and I was sweating, and you know how you hold that car seat in the crook, and you're going through the parking lot, everybody's staring at you. And I'm a person that when my surroundings are chaotic, like, I feel chaotic inside. I'm not a don't sweat the small stuff person. Like, I'm sweating all the small, big, all the stuff all the time. And when we were walking towards the car, I remember thinking, wow, this is really weird. Like, my surroundings are chaotic, but I feel really peaceful inside. And that's not me. And that's been happening a lot lately. That thing where I feel peaceful in the chaos. And so we buckled our kids in the car, and I'm sitting in the front seat talking to my husband, and I say, man, Marvin, what do you think this is? And he's like, I don't know. And so I started thinking about that. Okay, all of a sudden, this change has happened within me. I feel peaceful inside when my surroundings are chaotic. And another thing that was changing within me is whenever I would go out into the world, like places like Walmart or anywhere where you encounter other people, I was really aware of how often judging thoughts would pop to my head. Like, before I would have the judging thoughts, right? But I wouldn't notice them.
Right.
Now I'm noticing how often these thoughts are popping in my head all the freaking time. And I'm wondering why I'm having these thoughts, since I'm so messed up too. Like, who am I? And so if these two things, this peace in the chaos and this awareness of my own faults and my judgingness, are happening, and all I'm doing is showing up to this building with no real desire to know Christ in any way, what would happen if I learned about this thing? So that is where the conversion started. I read and I learned and I asked questions, and the rest was kind of like history. And so the reason, to go back to your original question, why do I share this? It's because when I came down from the mountaintop, when I was no longer on that conversion high that a lot of people will relate to, and I was just among the mere mortals trying to do our thing, everyone who was a Catholic, who was a Christian, looked so different than I felt. Like, they looked so shiny. They like just looked like they had it figured out, and they were crucifixes, and they said things like, I'll pray for you, and God's got this, and please pray for me, and God's got it. Yeah, but it just was different than what was happening. And so I knew I had two choices. I had the choice of either going back to my life before, right? Like, okay, this God thing's not for me. And that's not an option. Once you know that God is God, you can't lay it aside. Or I could show up in the world the way that I feel, the way that show and be honest about what Christianity is for me, and hope that it goes okay. And what happened whenever I did that was that other people were saying, wow, I thought everyone else was so shiny too. Like, I thought I was the only one. And it was that Me Too thing.
Yeah.
And so that's why I show up instead of just staying quiet.
Yeah.
And I'm happy, I know it.
If you're like me, then you've got a long wish list of things you need to do around your house. Things you just can't get to. It's not that I don't want to do them, but between my responsibilities at work, producing this show, and squeezing in some valuable mental downtime, I can't seem to get around to fixing the small stuff, and the big stuff is just waiting in line. To be honest, it kind of stresses me out. Maybe you're stressing out too. Well, stress no more, because I've got good news. My friend Ben Von Duke has started a handyman service, and he takes the mystery out of getting these things done. Ben Von Duke is not just some guy that calls himself handy. He knows what he's doing, and he knows a whole lot. Not only is he an experienced and professional carpenter, but he's kind of a Duke of all trades. What I love is that he's created an a la carte price list of services, so you don't have to worry about getting in your pockets too deep before you're ready. He'll fix your running toilet, install appliances, replace fixtures, install ceiling fans, repair sheetrock and concrete, and a whole lot more than that. Look, I'm not too proud to say this, but sometimes it takes me 3 times as long to fix something because I've got to get online and search videos just to figure out what tools I need. Then I have to go buy the tools that I don't have, and then kind of sort of come home and do the job. I don't have to do that anymore because Ben Von Duke will do it and do it better. On top of all that, he's just a good person, someone you can trust. He's honest, he's kind, and those are things that I value highly, and I bet you do too. You can get a hold of Ben Von Duke, the Duke of all trades, the good old-fashioned way, by using the phone. Call or text Ben at 337-540-1355. That's 337-540-1355. He'll send you his service and price list, and trust me, his prices are more than fair. And do me a favor, when you do message Ben at 337-540-1355, tell him you heard about the Duke of all trades on Find the Good News. And people respond.
Yeah.
I mean,
and some people don't love it. Like, not everyone responds, and that's okay, because those are the people that, because I'm not trying to talk to everyone.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I'm not.
No, I get that.
I'm just talking to certain people. And
Yeah.
the people that need it, get it. And it's so funny because I'm so two-sided, right? Like, I'll read something and I'll be like, oh, they're wrong. How dare they? But then if someone reads something of mine and says I'm wrong, I'm like, well, it wasn't meant for you. Like, I forget that sometimes the things that I read are not meant for me.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I get that. I mean, boy, there's a lot to unpack there. One of the things that I've got a question about is, especially coming from somebody who didn't believe in God and then now does, is drawing a line to Jesus.
Yeah.
Because not everybody draws that line.
Yeah.
You know, I've watched conversations, you know, I'm always fascinated by other people's testimony. Any kind of conversion, or not even really conversion, sometimes just something happens and they just start to sense that there's something else going on than just what is in the numbers and math and the science of things, you know, the mechanics of it all. There's something in there. And so they start to get this awareness of divine.
Yeah.
You know, and then they start to approach the idea of a maker, of an intelligence. And I'm using those words because that's what you hear out in the culture, you know. But not everyone gets to that point and then draws a line to Jesus.
Yeah.
You know, listening to your story, you got an interesting set of circumstances around you. You've got a husband who's a cradle Catholic.
Yeah.
Your family comes from a culture that was culturally Catholic.
Right.
So when you may be, let's say, hard-boiled atheist thinking is in your mind, but then when you do start moving towards God, there's already a runway there.
Yeah.
A Catholic runway.
And when I first started learning, like even when I was like, okay, there might be something here. I wasn't like, there might be something here, let me learn more about it, and Catholicism is the way to go.
Yeah.
That wasn't what I was thinking.
Yeah, you didn't have that like, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. It wasn't a part of your thinking, right?
No, it was.
Oh, it was. Okay.
So I knew when I started really researching and learning, I was okay with the fact that I might not end up Catholic.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that it might be something
Interesting.
else. I was almost like I had some friends that were different religions when I was growing up in Ville Platte.
Yeah.
That we would go, like, if I was staying the night at their house, that we would go to their, like, church services or whatever. And I always felt God more, if there was a God, I always felt God more there anyway.
Interesting.
So I was okay with the fact that that I may not end up Catholic.
Yeah.
I was okay with that.
Yeah.
That wasn't something I closed the door to.
See, I kind of come at it from a whole different direction. It's so interesting. I did not grow up Catholic.
No.
The only Catholic ancestor I have is my great-grandfather, and he spoke not a word of English, and he passed away when I was 5 years old. But he didn't raise my grandmother as a Catholic, and it didn't get passed down.
No.
And so I came to it. That's a long story, and I'm gonna.
I want to hear it.
Okay, so it gets wild.
Okay.
And I'm just gonna talk about it the way it happened.
Yeah, do it.
So, in 1995,
Okay.
I now I would call it depression.
Yeah.
I didn't know what was going on, but I was 21 years old, and I remember I still have some of my old journals from that time because I was trying to understand, but I felt dead.
Okay.
That's the way I describe it. I was like, I would even tell some of my close friends, I said, I feel dead. I feel like there's a deadness in me, and I honestly even felt like I didn't have long to live. Isn't that? It was like, and now looking back as I read those words, I go, oh, that was depression. I was in deep depression. My mother didn't know. My father didn't know. Nobody knew.
Yeah.
But, so I went on a little personal, I got this feeling like in my gut that I needed to get out of town and go on, just escape. So I went and bought one of those black and white marble composition notebooks. I drove to Natchitoches, Louisiana, because I had went to school there, and it was a peaceful place for me. And I thought, well, I'll just go. It's quiet. I'm going to get away, get in my own head for a little bit. But truthfully, when I look back, what it was is I was looking for something.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about God in a decade, or more, or Jesus for that matter.
Right.
I was just living a life, and I had died inside. That's the way I would portray that.
Yeah.
So I go on this little trip. Boy, I'm going to have to shorten this up because this is a really long story. So I go on the trip, and I get even more depressed while I'm up there because everything's just junk. It's storming. I had all these ideas. I was going to walk around,
Grass,
be quiet, sit on the river,
sun.
the lake, all that. None of that's happening. It's just rain. There was a tree limb that fell on the street, I remember, and I was like, well, I guess I'm just going to go back to my hotel room and be like this. I was actually kind of mad.
Yeah.
And so the rain was blowing sideways. I remember that because driving out to my hotel room, it was hard to stay on the road. I get to the hotel, the power's out, and the rain is actually blowing through the door into my room. So I'm like, just honestly, screw it.
Yeah.
I was so mad. I was mad. I couldn't even write in my stupid composition notebook that I was going to try to figure myself out.
Were you mad like at just life? Or mad at God?
I didn't know what was going on,
Yeah.
but something was going on, and it was happening rapidly and fast. And the fact I think that I had made the decision to enter it alone was probably the best thing that ever happened in my life, oddly enough, because I was lost.
Yeah.
That's just the word I would say. I was just flat out lost, didn't have a person to talk to about it. You know, there was no internet to go look it up and go, what's going on? It was just internal.
Yeah.
Now I'm in a dark hotel room with no power, can't write in my little journal. And so I decided to just go to sleep and be in that spot. So I have a dream while I am sleeping. And I was walking around a cemetery in my dream, and there were these just big, beautiful crepe myrtle trees and blue sky, and I felt 100% alive and 100% at peace.
Wow.
And it was like all that mess was just gone, and I honestly thought I was awake.
Yeah.
It was one of those kind of real surreal dreams where you're like, okay, I can't really tell the difference. But it ends up, I do wake up, and it was a dream, but had this feeling of like energy, I guess, like motivation.
Yeah.
I opened the window, it was perfect blue sky outside, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna pack my stuff up and I'm gonna go find a cemetery and go walk around, you know. So I do, and I ended up at the American Cemetery in Natchitoches. And it's the oldest cemetery in Louisiana, Purchase. So it's like, you know, kind of, I'd say Louisiana ancient. That would be the way I would put that.
Yeah.
When I get there, I park my truck off property and I start to walk through this little tiny iron gate. And when I walk in, I was a little unnerved because it looked a lot like what I dreamed about.
I love that.
You know, the crepe myrtle trees, the wind would blow and they'd kind of fall like snow. And it was just that, and all of a sudden it was like, it just stimulates all that dream I had. And I was like, that feeling started to emerge, right? And so I come over the hill at this newer part of the cemetery eventually. Actually, I walked up on this grave, and I remember there was an inscription on it, which 20 years later I finally discovered was a poem. But the inscription said, "Not dead, translated to a higher state, to which the angel death swings wide the gate. We too must pass, and there they wait." And that, for some reason, I read it once, and it was in me. It actually helped, and I don't know why. Now I know why. But all those years ago, I didn't know why, but it just resonated with whatever was going on in my life. I meandered through, go over the hill to the newer part of the cemetery, and there's this grave there. And it looked fairly new, and it was just littered with sunflowers. I mean, littered. And when I say littered, I mean insane. It looked like people just come. You see these big festivals where people just bring and dump garlands. It was that kind of situation, and I was drawn to it, and I walked over there, and I just fell down on my knees at the foot of this grave, and I started weeping and weeping and weeping. And to this day, the way I would describe it, it was like I was throwing up all that depression out of myself into the ground right there.
Yeah.
But it was being filled back up with something else, and it was like hope and light and goodness and mercy and just forgiveness. And I don't know, it wasn't like it was just being taken, it was being replaced.
Yeah.
I look at this grave that I'm at, and it's why I have such an affinity for cemeteries even to this day. I look at this grave that I'm at, and there's this young girl's picture staring back at me, and the date on her grave is a year to the day that I'm actually there. It was August 1st.
Yourself.
She died on August 1st, 1994, and I was there August 1st, 1995. And I was like, this is all these things happening so quickly were too synchronistic. And I'm going to kind of stop the story there because it goes on and on for 20 years.
Okay.
But I come to believe him that day in God.
Yeah.
But that's what fascinates me about your story, because I didn't have a Jesus runway.
Well,
you see what I'm saying? Long way around, I ended up being brought back to the church, but I went through a lot of different places to get there.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I think that the whole, me and my friends talk about this a lot, like with prayer especially. Like, I feel like for some of us, or maybe for a lot of us, like one is easier than the other to get to get behind.
Yeah.
God or Jesus, right? I mean, there's God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. Let's say the Trinity.
Yeah.
But for me, strangely enough, God feels more accessible because there is so much mystery in God. There's so much that we can't understand, and that feels like a comfortable place for me to be. And then Jesus is this historical dude, right, where historically he existed, whether now some people can say he's not divine or whatever, but I guess whenever I went through my conversion experience, when I was really what was at the foundation of that conversion was the fact that I don't know everything.
Yeah.
Like quantum physics is a thing that I don't get, but it's still a thing.
Yeah.
And so God is that for me. He's this thing. He is this all. He is everywhere. Like my spiritual director says, God is the water and we are the fish. He's not some other in the heaven sitting on a chair, the thing that we think of when we're young.
Yeah.
And so that is easier for me to get behind. The idea that I don't know and can't know everything. And so there's always more to experience there.
Yeah.
So the road for me, even now, to God is it feels a little bit more attainable than the road to Jesus. And I think that might not be, I think most people, maybe it's the other way around.
And that might just be the culture.
Maybe.
It might be, because I mean, it's something that predominantly is what is taught, to young children. I mean, I think you'd consider, that's why I think our country considers itself a Christian country, or at least that's what we're told. Sulfur. I have to say that. We get a lot of truck noise in here. But no, I mean, yeah, you're right. I only asked that question about drawing that line to Jesus because I do know a lot of people that, that's not their religion, it's not their spirituality, but they still have these really deep insights and loving kindness in their life and compassion and mercy and all the attributes that I would want to associate with being a Christian. Yeah. And so they're still bearing that fruit. Right. But they just haven't drawn that line. Yeah. And so, I don't know. Those are just things I tend to ponder. I find camaraderie with those people. In a lot of ways, just like you said, I mean, because you can rest in a sort of a mystery spot for a little while. I don't know. I just find it fascinating how different people find their way to God. Yeah. And for me, I guess I never really, when I was a kid, I never really sat around and thought about it.
You didn't?
No, I had this one experience. God, it's funny. I laugh at it now, but I lost a watch when I was a little boy on my parents' property, and they had like 3 acres of land, and so I'd lost this watch. It was brand new. It was a little robot watch or something, and I cried and I cried and I cried. I didn't know where I lost it, and so I remember I walked out into the woods and I prayed to God, please, God, I want to find this watch so bad. And I mean, I was just like out there begging for this watch. And this is going to sound silly to somebody because this is what happens next. I come walking across these 3 acres and just randomly I see this glint of like gold on the ground. And the sun just came out of the clouds like at that right little moment. And there it was, and I picked it up and I went running up to the front yard. My dad was outside working he was a carpenter. So he was doing some work with some of his guys from his crew. And I ran up to him and I tell him the story. I went back there and I prayed to God and I found my watch. He showed me my watch and I was like really excited, and I thought they were going to like go, that is amazing, and instead they all just chuckled. I think they thought it was funny and cute that I believed that that's what happened. It's funny what you carry from when you're a kid, because that, just like your dad saying that about Santa Claus, that stuck with me. My dad, I hold no grudge against my dad for that, honestly. But I mean, I only tell that to illustrate that we didn't think what those words carry gravity, but boy, they do. And doesn't that, like, for me, that terrifies me with my own experience with my kids, because all of the formative memories that I have with my parents or growing up, I'm sure my parents didn't think, oh, this is the thing. Right. They did their best, and we all do our best, but it's like, what are the ways that I'm messing up or that I'm screwing my kids up? Yeah, oh God, we worry about that all the time. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's something, some of my struggles with. I confirmed Catholic way later in life, and it's interesting because I mean I am a confirmed Catholic, but boy, I do struggle.
How long ago did you?
About 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I struggle
That's a pretty
with.
quick turnaround time. That's okay.
It is quick because, and it's always going to be this for me. I mean, I struggle with people.
Yeah.
You know, I love Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, pour it over my head and just drown me in him.
Yeah.
You know, I mean that. I can bring myself to just a full-blown tears because I just want to walk inside his heart sometimes.
Yeah.
And
that's
stay
beautiful.
there, but I want to see it so bad in people.
Yeah.
I do. And I hurt, like, for why I don't know, when I don't see him in places that have his name.
Yeah.
It just kills me. And that's why I love the Eucharist, but I don't always love getting there.
I get what you're saying.
Does that make sense?
Oh, so much. Yeah. I talk a lot about that a lot with my spiritual director because sometimes, like, when you're in conversation with other people, when I'm in conversation with other people that are the same religion as me, I'm confused about, I think there's a difference between, like, relativism and being okay with the fact that some things are gray. And I think sometimes that, especially in the Catholic world, we think things are black or white. And if they are not, you are wrong. And I came to this realization with my spiritual director, which I think you should meet. You would love her. That the black or white is what brought me into the church, but the discovery that there is gray is what's going to keep me.
That is so interesting because I have had the opposite experience.
Really?
God, it's so fascinating.
So the gray brought you in?
The color.
Okay.
Not the gray, but the kaleidoscope.
Okay.
And that's actually so fascinating. I mean, this is so
Yeah.
fascinating. I'll tell you something I struggle with, and I have not said it out loud, and I really fear saying it out loud because
Say it.
it's...
Say the crap. That's like my life motto.
I think what really messed me up was going on Curcia.
Yeah. Okay. I love that.
I'm being honest, and I don't think... I mean, something changed for me hardcore after that. Had a hard time with that retreat. It wasn't a retreat. It made me want to retreat.
Yeah.
I had a hard time with what was said.
Yeah.
And I couldn't make peace with the song De Colores.
Okay.
And what came out of that. Because that song says all in color.
Yeah.
All in color, and so must our love be, like every bright color to make my heart cry. I can't sing that song without crying.
Because of the pain of that weekend?
No,
or
because
it's so
of what
beautiful?
it's so beautiful.
Right.
It's not what I left with that weekend.
Yeah. Where in your where in the time did you go
That
to
was
the Crucio?
probably a year or so ago.
Yeah.
I had a hard time because of what came from it and what happened after it. Small groups, things like that. It was just not a good experience.
I am not a fan of the small group that comes after that retreat. I have been a couple times, and I choose not to go to that.
Well, the message for me, this is what's really tough. I mean, on retreat, my son is gay.
Right.
And I heard a lot of, well, if you love God, you'll correct your son.
Yeah.
That's hard to reconcile with. And they didn't tell me that.
Right.
If I'm being honest, and this is really exposing myself, I didn't say anything about that, but I saw other people with gay children say things, and that was their instruction. And I watched people, for whatever, everybody's got their own reasons, say, yep, that's right, that's the right way to be. I couldn't align my heart with that.
Yeah.
I don't know that I ever will. I don't want to. I'm not even going to act like I ever will. I'm not. I love my son. What am I talking about?
No, yeah.
He's filled with love, mercy, and compassion, and kindness, and wisdom for a young boy. And I go, again, Christian traits.
Yeah.
But not a Christian.
Yeah. You know,
You see what I'm saying? It gets real murky, and there's the color I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Very colorful, lots of variety. It's a bouquet, and the black and white is what got to me.
What bothered you?
It bothered me because it was like this and that. The particular of pointing out of another's wrong. It seemed like it was very heavy laden with that, and become a voice that I started to hear more and more, which was, it's your job to abscond your brother. It's your job to tell your brother where he's doing wrong. It's your job. Now you need to take care of yourself, but you need to let your brother know when he's sinning. Right. And I was like, I don't know. I'll be honest. This is just being real blunt.
Yeah.
I got so many of my own sins.
Preach it. Yeah.
And I go right to Jesus saying, you got all that wood out of your own eye?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm blind. I got so many things I have to work on.
Same.
I don't have the time, nor am I in any position to be telling my brother whether he should be receiving communion or not.
I'm with you.
Come on.
I'm with you because I'm so jacked up. Like, I don't have the time to be worried about helping you. I can't even help my own self.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, I'm watching look, if I could stick a jump drive in my head and every thought that I had was a separate file and I could sort through that mess. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm busy worrying about that. How can I even get my own thoughts wrangled up?
But going back to the Curcio thing, that was a good exercise for me in humility because my natural tendency was to be like so aware of what happened there that was wrong. What happened there that was judgy or hard or whatever. Yeah. And so although that was for me a beautiful and hard weekend, it almost made me walk away being more aware of my own crap. Yeah, no, I can get that totally. Because before you go, I don't know if you've got any if anybody talked to you before you go, but before you go, people that have been will say like, stay open-minded and just let what happens. And it is a hard weekend. Yeah, it is. Well, you're tired. Yeah. I mean, that eats it. And it's not like you're not holding hands and singing Kumbaya the whole time. There's a little bit it's a militaristic. Yeah, very militant. No, you're right. That's the word I actually use. And so that for me was a little bit like Yeah. And so instead of using that to be like, what is all this happening here? I'm like, wow, that's another example of how I am so not open. Yeah, no, I get that. I agree. No, I saw a lot of that in myself. I actually almost left. Yeah. I had really come to a point where I was like, I think I'm just going to get up, pack my suitcase back up, and I'm just going to roll on down the street. Yeah. And just walk out and get a hold of my wife, say, look, come pick me up. That's where I was at. It's not a lie. So was there any redeeming quality or anything? Yeah, there was, because there was a young man there who was going through some really hard stuff. And I did push through that night. I just laid in my cot, and prayed and let it sink to the bottom of the pool, so to speak, because I knew it was just thoughts. I was having a lot of thoughts, and those thoughts can eat you up. I mean, sure. That's my whole conversion story starts with negative thoughts. Yeah. So I let this thing sink to the bottom. I went to the next day, and then something happened the next day where I made a connection with this person who really needed a connection. Yeah. And so that was one of the things that came out of that, was that this whole experience could have just been for that. For sure. Right? That little bond, that little voice. Or for the song even, that's so beautiful. Yeah. You know what I mean? Right. And I'm happy. I know. You're driving down the road. Everything is going just fine. You're listening to the new episode of Find the Good News in your car, and you're all stoked about trying out this zipper merge thing you've been hearing about, when all of a sudden you hear that sickening tap on your windshield that's just a little too loud. I've got some bad news for you. You've just got yourself a rock chip. Unfortunately, I've got some worse news. If you don't take care of that rock chip, it's going to turn into a crack. But I do have some good news too. You don't have to have a rock chip or a crack, because I've got a way for you to take care of it ASAP.
If you go to asapglassco.com right now, you can stop that chip from winding across your windshield like the Calcasieu River. I used to be terrible about getting a rock chip, saying I'll take care of that later, and then later turns into this irritating crack that just spreads from one side of my windshield to the other. I should have taken care of it ASAP by scheduling a repair with ASAP Glass. ASAP Glass is local, right here in Sulphur, Louisiana, and they're mobile. Even better, you can get a quote right from your mobile phone at asapglassco.com. ASAP Glass is owned and operated by two of my best friends, lifelong friends, Dan and Kayla Smith. Dan the Glass Man will make sure his team of glass technicians gets to your job ASAP and make sure it's done right so you can keep that windshield crack out of sight. If you do get that rock chip and you don't take care of it ASAP, that's okay. ASAP Glass does complete windshield replacements. Remember, ASAP Glass is mobile, so you don't have to worry about finding time to drop your vehicle off at their shop. You get your quote at asapglassco.com. Make your appointment with Kayla, and then before long, an ASAP Glass van is on its way to your location. That's it. I know you're probably looking at a rock chip right now. Don't wait. Take care of it ASAP. Go to asapglassco.com on your mobile device and get a quote. That's asapglassco.com. And make sure to tell Dan and Kayla you heard about ASAP Glass on Find the Good News. You know, and there are some, and I'll say this, I mean, who am I to judge? But I mean, there were some relationships that came out of that are still very solid and very beautiful. Yeah. And those, they're smaller. But again, it just illustrated to me that groupthink isn't always the best thing for me. And sometimes, I don't know, I fear for the people who hide things out of fear. I feel bad for them because you can see it. I sensed it. There's just people that were, there's pains that they're just keeping inside because they're going, this isn't a safe place to talk about this. Sure. This isn't safe here. And I'm going, where else should your pain be safe but in the heart of Jesus? That just, to me, doesn't make sense. I can't reconcile it. I can't make sense of that. Like, isn't that the refuge, the ship, the boat?
Yeah, and I think other people, like, whenever we sense that we're in a place that is supposed, like, that is like that, that's supposed to be safe, but it's not, I think that comes from the other people's fear. Like, whenever you have this truth about you or this thing you're struggling with and you can't bring it to your quote-unquote church, it's because the people that are in that space are worried that they're one mistake away from poo-pooing the whole thing. Like, if they don't know what to do with your truth. They're not solidly standing on the ground of how big God is and how good Christ is. That they're worried that one thing that they don't understand or that makes them feel uncomfortable or that is wrong that's all it's going to take to bring down the whole thing. It's just their own fear. And so then we're all living in a big fear bubble. Yeah. All of us. And that's why I think you need to build your own.
Well, fear is poison. Yeah. I mean, it is. Fear will... It's one of the things I wrote down I wanted to talk to you, and I'm sure you've heard this before, the noonday devil.
No.
Well, it's... The word acedia, it's one of the 7 deadly sins, and people quickly go, well, that's sloth. But if you read any like the Desert Fathers and things like that, and I was listening this morning to another podcast, and I was like, oh, this would be something great to talk to you about. Okay. So the noonday devil is basically deeper. It's like a depression, but it's more like a voice that tells you you're not good enough. You're not the one. Don't say anything. Yeah. You know that, and it's a subtle thing because you think it's just you. Mm-hmm. But they call it that because it's so seductive, because it's the one that creeps in when you're just right on the precipice of taking action or some things on your heart, and you just go, yeah, but it's not for me to do. I'll wait. Somebody else will do it, and I'll just join it.
You know what that reminds me of? There's this book called The War of Art. And Stephen Pressfield wrote that, and he talks about resistance and how anytime you are on the verge of spiritual enlightenment or creating this thing that's going to bless so many people or making something that's big, your creative genius is balanced against an opposite and equal force of resistance that is trying to keep you quiet and silent from sharing that beautiful, wonderful thing that might help people.
Yeah, I get that.
And we all have resistance, all of us. We all experience, especially anytime that you're trying to do something creative, you will experience resistance.
Yeah, I talk about that on the show all the time. I know, again, I'm saying this to everybody listening. I've said it every episode, but you're right in that territory of the creative force.
Yeah.
I use that word because it's safer than just saying God, but I truly believe that is God is like love is a force, creativity is a force, and it's an energy, and it literally is out in the world being born all the time.
Have you ever read the book Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert?
No.
Necessary reading.
Will do. Big Magic.
Big Magic,
Okay.
Elizabeth Gilbert. Oh my goodness. She, I don't know her faith background, but she writes about that creative genius and about how it's just kind of, you need to read the book.
Well, I mean, isn't the
Magic.
whole universe just that at all? I mean, it's just manifesting things constantly. Things are
And
rising.
when you're like a creative person, I mean, like I call myself a writer, and it took me so long to be able to say that because I thought that like before I could call myself this thing, other people had to say, yeah, you are that thing.
Yeah.
But no, like you can call yourself whatever you are at your core, whether people affirm that in you or not. So
Yeah.
I'm a writer. So she talks about in that book, and it's so true, and I bet you'll know what I'm talking about, how there are ideas and creative pockets out in the world, and they want to work with you. And you have to be open. And if you're not open, then that idea will pass you by and go to the next person that is open.
Yeah.
And
okay.
when there's times when you're open and that creative, she calls it a muse or something, when that creative thing comes to you and you're acting out of that, it's almost like it's not you. Like
Yeah.
you just write and write and write and write, and then you look back at it and you're like, oh, I wrote this thing. It's so wonderful. But you didn't do that. You were participating with that muse.
Yeah. No, I get that. I think that it kind of reminds me of a conversation we had on this show with somebody, and I can't remember who, but it was one of the saints was saying, give me the leftover grace that is disregarded and ignored, and I thought, well, that's a beautiful picture of, grace flowing out, and then sometimes it runs into a sponge, but then sometimes it hits a rock and it flows around, and then there's somebody else sitting over there going, well, I'll take that.
For sure.
And they're open to it, and then it arises within them.
Yeah.
It's kind of a beautiful thing.
I experience it really concretely in the fact that like I'll be like putting makeup on or like driving, and something will hit me out of nowhere, and if I don't like write it down in my phone really fast or like dictate it if I'm driving or do something to hold on to it, it's gone.
Yeah.
Even if you can't unpack it in that moment, you have to like at least write down enough to where you can revisit it.
That's something about you that just I admire. And when I first started kind of orbiting you online, cyber stalking, I was right after I kind of got into the Catholic Church, and I was just looking around for other voices. I mean, unfortunately, I wanted to feel safe, because I know that my voice and my thoughts and my journey isn't always as clean cut.
Yeah.
I don't have an addiction story, and I'm not maybe belittling that. I mean, everybody has their own story, but I don't have something like that where there was a great tragedy and then God put the right person and I got the catechism and then I came into the front door of the church and it was always better. It wasn't like that. And so it's a little strange. I'm always hesitant to share the full story because of the oddities mixed in it.
Because what will people say? Will it be like cookie cutter what they
Well,
think?
no, I'll tell
is the
you
right
what'll
way?
happen. I'll tell you exactly what'll happen. And you'll hear it on another episode if you ever listen to all these hours of the show. But I went to one of the small groups one night, and they ask you. Found out I was a
I think I heard
convert.
this.
Yeah, and they said, "Where'd you convert from?" And I mean, the typical answer would be, "Oh, I used to be Baptist. I used to be this." And I was like, "Well, I practice Buddhism." Well, I'm glad that God took you away from that satanic stuff. I went home that night like going, "This is not safe.
Yeah.
I can't talk about
Right.
if everything I did in 20 years that generated love, mercy, compassion, and seeking closeness with God is going to be thrown into this pot as satanic. Come on." I was like, that's just not.
That's back. That brings us back to the whole like we think God is bound by our laws or by our rules. Like that's not how it works.
Yeah, it was hard. I still struggle with it, and it's made me honestly tie some things off. I just go, I can't do that anymore. I have to let things flow a different direction.
Yeah.
But that's a digression from what I was going to say about you. I was impressed and just kind of a little mesmerized because, like, look how she uses the tools available to us today. And you could be in your car and you'll just make a video. You have a thought and you catch it and you share it. And I got to thinking after I've watched many of them. I haven't watched them all, but I've watched a lot of your messages. And one of the things I thought was a little funny was that as I started looking at all the different people following you, I was like, this is mostly ladies. And I'm like, this one guy on the outside kind of.
I think the guys hide it, though, because I've heard that from other guys. Like,
oh, really?
Yeah, they'll be like, I'll log in to, like, watch your live video, and like, it shows my name, and it's, like, all girls, so, like, I hurry up and log out, and I'll watch it later.
God, that's so funny. I've actually done that exact thing. I remember doing that at least once, going, there's a bunch of ladies in here, and I'm this one guy. Like, but the subject is relevant. I mean, it's still relevant to stuff that was going on internally. But anyway, I think it was just the honesty and the quickness and your ability to do that, because not everybody can do that. Well, maybe not everybody can do it. Not everybody has the courage to do it.
And then I think too, like, not everybody's called to do it, because like sometimes people will message me and they'll say things that are kind of like hurtful to themselves. They'll say like, God, you're so honest about these things, and I feel so bad because my social media looks like this and it looks like that, and it's only my highlight reel. And so they kind of like, it's kind of like the opposite, right? We all talk about how social media looks a certain way and we need to be more real, but we don't think about the fact that for some people, social media is the highlight reel, and that's okay. Like, they're allowed to post beautiful pictures of their family and have Pinterest parties, and and we're not all called to like be as unfiltered as Diana is. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I sometimes I get sad because women will message me and they're using my showing up and just saying crazy stuff to beat themselves up because they're not in that place, and that's okay. You know? So I don't know, I think that's something that happens a lot. People will say that to me a lot, and so I always feel like, no, it's okay. It's fine.
Not everybody is going to need to do that. I mean, there's that feeling that there's that comparing that goes on internally. It's like, oh, well, they're doing that, maybe I should do that.
Right.
And then there's voices of dissent as well. I mean, I wanted to talk about that a little bit. I mean, blowback from being so honest. Yeah. I mean, have you experienced that?
I have, yeah.
A lot or a little, or?
It's funny because most of the blowback that I experience is from people who are quote unquote close to me.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Close to you, family, friends, like.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was a period of time when we talked about how I came down from the mountain of the conversion, and I just started saying, where I was just showing up in the world in the way that I felt like I was really called to, where I was just drowning in self-doubt. I mean, I would go weekly to talk with my spiritual director and ask her, okay, I'm going to talk at this church. Like, do you think I should go, or do you think like I shouldn't go because I'm really like this terrible person who like shouldn't be talking to people? And she's like, no, like, you go, like, you're. And so I had this immense, I mean, I can't even, it was every positive thing that happened during that amount of time was met with negativity from my own self. So people would message me and say underneath like a message or a video, like, you're so inspirational, and that would make me want to like hide. Because,
that they were telling you that you were inspirational.
Yes, because I don't know, just
feel like a charlatan.
I felt like imposter syndrome on crack cocaine. Okay. On crack cocaine, imposter syndrome. Yeah. And that happened for a really long time. Like, just, I would be out having dinner with my family and someone would snap a picture of me and be like, oh, she was like, and that made me want to throw up.
Oh, that like local celebrity status.
A little bit, like, which that sounds so silly to even say, because
no, but I mean, it's
sometimes I'll go places and people will know who I am and I don't know who they are, and that was a lot for me in that period of time. Like, it was just self-doubt times a million. Okay. Yeah. And then there was a period of time after that where I was really showing up and saying things and feeling all of this self-doubt, where I felt the call was no longer there. I was in a hard spot, a little bit of depression.
I get it.
And I just didn't feel like making videos or telling people anything.
Yeah.
I could barely get myself dressed. So I didn't feel like doing any of that. And what I realized in that moment of real depression is that, wow, that call I had back then, that was real. Like
Yeah.
that was truly, I was being called forward.
Yeah.
And so I wish I wouldn't have spent all that time in self-doubt.
Man, I can relate to a lot of that, and I bet a lot of people can too. I'm glad you shared it. I had started a Divine Mercy devotion where we'd get together at the Grove.
Yeah, I think I saw that.
Mercy mornings.
Yeah.
That the part of the story I didn't tell you, which I'm not going to share it on this show because it's so long. It's another related to that whole Natchitoches situation. Was years later encountering the Divine Mercy on August 1st, another year. And then when I was like, what is this Divine Mercy? Who's St. Faustina? I didn't know who she was. And then I read her diary, and the first page I flipped to says, on August 1st, when St. Faustina was brought into her, I was like, God, it's too many things with this connection. So
when August 1st comes, you're like, okay.
That's my day, man.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's my day. That's my holy day in the year. But all that to mean the Divine Mercy really was it still is. I mean, it's very powerful in my life. I mean, it's the devotion for me.
Yeah.
And I wanted to share that with other people in a different way, perhaps in a space that was a little, I'll put it this way. Like I said, not everybody's going to walk through the front door of the church.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to create a space where it was just like that safe circle where people could go, hey, I'm going to wait. I'm in the outer orbit out here. You know, I'm not in the Goldilocks zone. I'm not Earth. I'm freaking, Jupiter or Mars. I don't have an atmosphere. I need to get closer, but I don't feel safe to get in that ring yet. Well, that was kind of what Mercy Mornings was going to be. And this is kind of crazy, but by stamping it Catholic, it turned into... started to become just another thing. And I mean, not that those things are good, but I was like, well, we already have these things. Yeah. We can already get together in the church and pray the same prayers that everybody else is praying. But there were people who were coming to that who were really, and I don't mean this against them, they'll say that they were lost just like anybody else, going, I'm disenfranchised, I'm lost, I'm hurting. For any 100 of reasons, right? I can come here and sort of touch my faith, the faith of my childhood. I can pray the rosary. I can enter this Divine Mercy and sort of begin to hear the call saying, come home, come home. When that mercy door, as I started calling it, becomes more rigid, and it starts to atrophy, and then it starts to look exactly like the other stuff, then it isn't what it is anymore. And so I became fearful. I became doubtful. I didn't stand up and rise up of what was going on in my heart, and I just sort of let it fizzle away, be out of fear, out of fear, because I started to hear you could start to see the division even within a small group of 20 people. You would see people who had private secret sins and prayers and pain, things that hurt them, hang back and want to talk after it was over. Yeah. And cry and weep and hold each other and love each other. But the front end might be prayers against same-sex marriage, prayers against abortion, and all the classics. And I'm not belittling it, but saying that, but it's the classic tropes and things we pray for, things that people should pray for. But those people weren't coming for that. Yeah. They were broken. You can't take someone who's broken or who's... People think there is one way to evangelize. And the truth is that the ocean that exists between someone who is a non-believer or who has experienced great hurt in their life and someone who's saying, here's the rule book, is so wide, it's uncrossable. And there are some of us who are called to make that ocean crossable. And the way you make the ocean crossable is not by handing rule books and being shiny, like I like to say. You have to be real, and you have to be...
like, the truth for me is and will always be that when I am elbow deep in a sink full of dishes, the thought, what if there is no God, will hit me on the side of the head out of nowhere. That will always be the truth for me. Me and God have an agreement, like, I'm gonna keep showing up even though, like, this crazy thing happened, God, like, I'm gonna show up anyway.
Yeah.
And when people who are on the other side of unbelief, when people are unbelieving and they hear that story, there's a part of them that says, maybe I could be a believer then,
Yeah.
if she's not unwavering in her faith. When people that are on the other end hear all of these rules and all of these, this is God, this is faith, this is truth, they look across the ocean and say, oh, that's what that is? I'm not that. I can never be that.
Right.
What's the point of even trying?
Yeah. No, you're right. God, that's all of that's beautiful. I mean, it can be so heavy that people can't carry it.
Yeah.
You know, and especially broken people.
For sure.
Because you're asking them to carry something inside themselves, something new, and they can't carry what they've got already. They're looking for somebody to help them carry.
Yeah.
And I mean, and all the images of Christ that have drawn me in, and ideas of Christ as someone that does carry that with you. He'll kneel down in the dirt with you. He'll put his hands in the sink with you.
Yeah, accompaniment.
Yeah, accompaniment. Yes.
Yeah.
Right, walking with people. Yeah.
And there's people that scares. There's people that say, okay, accompaniment, that's cool, but then,
But. Yeah.
you know, and
No, I know.
and I don't know.
No, I know that's hard. I've struggled with all of those things. Yeah, and I still do. And honestly, maybe even that's something that will come out of these conversations on the show will be that I'll find my way to some kind of peace. But I have trouble reconciling keeping people at bay, keeping people out, or making sure that not keeping them out, but making sure that they know what I know, so that I know they know, so they can then do the thing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And that's a ridiculous statement that I just said.
I just totally get it. I get exactly what you're saying.
You know, it's more important that I know that you know what I know.
Yeah.
Than it is for you to just walk up to this God who is pierced open for you and wants you to drink and eat him.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's more important that I know that you know that before you do that. And that's not for me, that's for you, even though I need to know.
Yeah.
It's to me, it honestly gets in the territory of ridiculousness.
Do you have like a group of like legit friends, like where you can rest in the friendship?
I have one
friend where like it's like legit.
Yeah, my wife.
Yeah.
I'm lucky to have her.
Does she have a group of friends with capital F where it's like you can rest in that? Or are you guys your own little bubble?
Honestly, I would love to know her answer to that. And we can ask her. But if I had to answer for her, I'd say deep down, it's probably me.
Yeah.
You know, we hang on to an anchor together. And I'm lucky to have her.
That's amazing,
you know?
Because, you know, a lot of people have great marriages or wonderful marriages, wonderful relationships, but they're not a place where the truth can dwell among just the two of you in such an open way. Because think about it, you're two people, like even with friendships, you're a group of people who are different, right? And you're coming to each other and you talk about stuff and you have a safe space. But when you have that with your spouse, there's a sort of intimacy there that's not elsewhere, because you're really laying it all, every nook and cranny out. And if that's where your safe space is, that's like the best place for your safe space to be.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. It's interesting. I heard that from another gentleman one morning at one of the Mercy Mornings things. It was after it was over, and we were just visiting, and we were recounting just different stories, you know, faith stories, and he reminded me of that in something he said. He said, you know, I got to tell you something. He said, all these stories that you've told today, he said, you keep saying me and my wife.
Yeah.
I was talking to my wife. He said, I don't have that. I'm not going to leave here today and go home and tell my wife about this experience, the good conversation we have, because she's not interested. And we just don't talk about it. It's the part of our life that's just not there. And he said, you're blessed to have that. And I was like, man, I went home and I was like, I am blessed to have that.
You for sure are.
Very, very, it's a treasure that probably take for granted
Yeah.
because I don't sit and think of it.
Because there's people that are married that are in happy, like I said, that are in happy marriages that they're not like sitting with a glass of wine with their wife and like talking deep. Like they don't. Each spouse does not feel known. And if you're in your marriage and you feel known
Yeah.
by your wife, or you're trying to let her know you and she wants to know who that is, that's some good stuff that doesn't happen everywhere.
Yeah. Thanks for reminding me.
You're welcome.
Yeah. You have that?
You know, my husband and I, like I always talk about how like my propensity to like, my life goal is for everyone to know me. Like that is like
For real?
literal.
Really?
I don't know. Like other people have this thing where they think these thoughts and have these struggles and they just like keep it in.
Yeah, sure.
That does not make sense to me. That blows my ever-loving mind.
You don't have your little bottle factory.
I
You're
don't
giving them
have
away. Here's a bottle of
Yes,
me.
and
Here's a
people
bottle.
are like, keep your bottle to yourself, ma'am. Please stop with the bottles. And so my husband is my husband is my opposite. He's introverted. He's real easy to please. He doesn't have that. And so he is the best person to be married to me because he is laid back and he'll accept it. But like the fact that like I want to have a 2-hour conversation about, this weird thing, he doesn't get that.
Do you know what's crazy?
Thank God he doesn't, because if he did, we would be, our
man.
marriage would be a mess.
That's exactly. I mean, it's very similar to Michelle and I.
Yeah.
Michelle is quiet. She's a listener. Like that is her
Yeah.
superpower, man. She can listen to anybody's stuff.
Yeah.
People honestly, I think people take advantage of her, to be
Yeah.
truthful. But I'm more, for someone who has social anxiety and all these fears, I'll go stick myself out on a limb
Yeah.
and go
Hear
and
me.
deal with whatever came with it, and then gripe about it to her and go, I can't believe I'm having to deal with this, that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. And yeah, it's interesting, and we counterbalance each other. I probably take more from her.
Oh
than-
yeah, me too.
if
I'm
being
draining.
truthful.
I'm draining.
Oh yeah, I'm like, let me plug in here, and you get to hear all my stuff.
Yeah.
Poor thing.
I think it's amazing because like I always say, I accidentally married my husband. Like I wasn't like, let me think of, who do I want to spend the rest of my life with? Let me be really thoughtful about this. I got pregnant, and we were like, we ended up getting married when my daughter was like 4 months old. And so like it accidentally happened. Like okay, let's go ahead and get married. That's a good idea. Like we loved each other, but
Yeah.
it wasn't like we didn't sit down and like write a list.
Yeah, you
know
didn't
how
go,
people are so
we should
thoughtful
get married.
about
yeah,
it?
and I see people, or at least I see what people put out there that looks like that.
They thought
there are
it through.
people.
Like I don't even know if I would have gotten married if it wouldn't have happened the way it happened. Not because we got married because we had a daughter, but because we were like, okay, we just it wouldn't have occurred to us.
Yeah.
Kind of. So I accidentally got married. And it worked out so well. Because if I would have married anybody else, that would have been a big old, I'm a lot, kind of.
My son says you're extra. You'd be
I am
extra.
extra.
That's his word. That's what the kids are saying.
I am. I'm just, I just
You're
am.
extra.
I'm a lot to deal with. And so he is the best person to deal with it.
I see. Yeah, I do. I really do. Believe it or not, I feel like that about Michelle. Sometimes I think I'm making hoghead cheese out of her because I'm putting her
sure.
under so much pressure all the time.
Yeah.
Hey, I have a new idea. I want to try to do this.
Yeah.
Oh, and also I'm going to stick myself out there and say a bunch of stuff that might potentially, get us some dirty looks.
For sure.
I mean,
And-
who wants to do that? Oh, it sounds like a great plan, husband.
Yeah, that's Marvin. I'm like, okay, remember how we were like, doing all that? Okay, now we're going to just do natural family planning. And now I'm going to go tour places and I'm going to go speak at different things. And he's like, okay, let's do it. I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to do this thing. He's like, okay.
Wow.
And he just goes with it.
Yeah.
And then he tries to do something and I'm like, whoa. Have you thought this through? Let's discuss.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Really is. So you've wrote a book,
I did. I wrote
or more than one?
a workbook. I wrote a workbook. So when I started putting myself out there a lot, I kept getting the same question from people like, okay, you seem like you're approachable.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to approach you and I'm going to ask you, what can I do
Yeah.
to be better at this whole God Jesus thing.
Yeah, so you're getting sort of some mentor type roles.
Kind of, yeah. People kept asking the same questions, and so I said, man, to answer that, there's so many things I want to say, and I can't answer you with the way that I want to. So that's where the 7-day faith challenge came from. It was like, okay, this is my answer to you, because I don't have the time to sit with every single person and answer them in the way that I want to.
Yeah.
I started off writing a different book that sucked. It was terrible.
What was that book?
Okay, this is so embarrassing.
Oh, does anybody know this?
I think my friends, and they laughed and laughed. So I was like, I'm going to write a book. It's been my life dream to write a book. I'm going to write a book. So every morning I would wake up before my kids woke up, and I would write my book. And it was going to be a book that helped people read the book of Luke in a way that really came alive, in a way that really made scripture, come alive for them. And so I would sit in the morning and I would go through and I would write this book. And I was about like chapter 5 or 6 into my book when I realized I was rewriting the Bible. That's all I was doing. In my own words.
I got you.
Literally. So I'm like, I don't know that this is a sustainable project. I'm just rewriting the Bible.
People do that
Luke.
all the time, though.
But
there's books like that.
It wasn't that interesting. It was just it wasn't that good. And so that's where and I was like, okay, this book is terrible, and I'm rewriting the Bible. I'm pretty sure there's that's like plagiarism, so I can't do that.
That's interesting. So that's how that started out,
and so then
did it morph into.
Yeah. So then instead, I was like, okay, I can't write a book where I rewrite the Bible. That's been done, unfortunately. Let me instead, if my goal is to help people read the Bible, or help women that are interested read the Bible, how can I do that? How can I help women instead of trying to write a book for writing a book's sake because I want to write a book?
Right.
What's something I could write that would help the people that are actually paying attention to me right now?
Yeah.
And that's where the workbook came from.
Yeah. No, I think it's good though.
Yeah.
What's come from doing that workbook? I mean, what kind of blessings have you received from putting that out there?
Wow. Well, I hear from people that it's started things off for them, that they weren't praying or weren't going to church or weren't even sure what they believed, and that it helped them a lot.
Yeah.
And then
mostly Catholic audience, or is it people outside of?
Mostly a Catholic audience, yes. I don't hear from, but I've heard from people that are like maybe in different faiths, grew up in different faiths, that now, but weren't practicing, that now are looking more at maybe at Catholicism differently.
Yeah, sure.
They weren't practicing anything, and so now they're looking at, there's this way to do this one thing.
Right.
Let me look at this. And then the book really opened the door for speaking, which is where I feel the most at peace, in that is where I am called. Like we talked about how I have a lot of self-doubt, and I have a lot of self-doubt in this machine. But where I don't have any doubt is when I'm up in front of a group of people talking.
Really?
Yeah, before I'm nervous, and after I wonder if I messed up. But while I'm in it, while I'm up there and I'm talking, I feel like I am exactly where I am asked to be.
Wow. And what do you do Q&As after?
That's my favorite part.
Very good. I love hearing that. I get what you mean. Because they're inviting you to answer the question. That's what I find about a Q&A, or even like this kind of format. I'm asking you the question.
Yeah.
And so if you're I have learned to accept that as an invitation. I'm like, okay, you obviously know if you're here, then you know kind of who you're talking to or listening to, whatever.
Yeah.
And I've opened the door for a Q&A. And if you're going to ask me this question, then you must want an answer from me. You don't want an answer from a book. You want my answer.
Yeah.
Right? So it's freer. It's a strange feeling because you'd think it would be more terrifying.
Yeah, I like the question and answer because now I feel like we're community.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about stuff. And it's not just Q&A either. Like I'll say, you have to, at those types of things, you have to like entice people to talk to you because everyone's nervous. Like who's going to be the first person to ask the question? So I give away free stuff. That way they feel like they want to talk to me.
I see.
But it's not just Q&A. I'll say if you have something to share.
Yeah.
And so people will raise their hand and say, hey, I realized this thing about myself. And it has nothing, it's not a question for me. It's just something they want to share with the group. And then somebody else in the group will say, wow, hey, that thing. And now we're talking. Yeah. Now we're communicating.
Yeah.
Instead of just sitting in chairs staring at Diana talking.
Just receiving information.
Yeah.
Is there anything that stands out? Like, is there one memory from doing this that you just go, if this is the only thing that came from this, the whole journey has been worth it?
Man, it's so hard for me to answer that because so much of that feedback is packaged in that self-doubt. So I don't even receive it, really.
Really?
Yeah.
Isn't that something?
I need to be better at that.
I find that interesting. I mean, and I believe you because I understand the feeling, but I think it's probably, I bet other people are surprised to hear that.
When people come to me and they say, you're so inspirational, or, gosh, keep doing what that stresses me out. When people come to me and say, thank you for being so real, I can accept that. I'll take that in.
Yeah.
Thank you for being so real.
Yeah.
Thank you for being honest. I love how you're so approachable. That I can take in.
Yeah.
But the other stuff, like you helped me to do this thing, or you changed this faith, like someone, I can think of one situation where it felt okay, where, to answer your original question, I was in church. And that's like the worst place for me to go because there are certain people in that building who are aware of me online, and I'm not aware of them. So then, like, they see me in church, like, with my kids, and one has a diaper that's dirty, and I'm like, oh man, this is me. Hey, what's up? And they're like, well, why am I listening to this girl? But someone came up to me in the cry room once and said, she had tears in her eyes, and she's like, hey, I know you don't know me, but you are the reason I'm here. Like, you started this whole thing for me. And I had heard that before, but I think instead of it being a message on the internet or whatever, having her face me, and just the trueness in that statement was written on her face, and she was emotional about it. That was like something that stuck with me.
Yeah.
But most of the time I have a hard time. Like, I'm not good at receiving things like that.
No, I get that. I'm the same way.
Almost to where, like, once again, my spiritual director, she's like, sponsored by Diana, spiritual director. My spiritual director told me, like, sometimes when we push those compliments aside, we can kind of like hurt the other.
I see that.
Like, if someone comes to you and says, hey, what you have done has really blessed me, and you're like, oh, all glory to God, like, the other person thinks, oh dang, like, did I just say something wrong?
Yeah.
Should I have not said that?
Yeah.
And that's kind of hurtful to that other person.
I can understand that. I mean, that's hard for me, though, to accept any kind of compliment. I usually, and I think the right approach that's good advice, is to just have be grateful about it.
Yeah.
And say, well, thank you. And I think I've heard you say that.
Yeah,
same
that's one
thing.
of my favorite little things, is like when you get a compliment, the most humble thing is to just say thank you outwardly and nothing else.
Yeah.
And then interiorly to say that's all you, God.
Yeah.
But you don't have to school the person that gave you a compliment on how that's all God, because that could kind of chastise them and make them feel like they just said something wrong.
Yeah.
And it's actually not like my natural tendencies when someone gives me a compliment on something, and it could be something as like easy as, I like your lipstick, or you always have your whatever. My natural tendency is like, let me combat what you just said with 3 things that I suck at.
Oh, yeah.
And now we're having a whole conversation about me. That's not more humble.
Right. Dragging it away from an elevated place and into like a base. Yeah.
So it's actually more humble to just say thank you, receive that, and if you need to, interiorly direct that compliment to the Lord.
Yeah.
You don't have to like talk about how much you suck, which is like my favorite thing to do.
Yeah. It's weird you saying that, like, all glory to God. I hear that a lot, and I don't now. I've actually had that thought a few times. Is that actually real, or is that just an automated response because it's safe to say?
Yeah, is that person saying all glory to God because they really want to point the fact that all glory should go to God, or are they saying that because they feel shameful and uncomfortable with what you just said?
Yeah, it's very interesting, and it's worth digging into myself about that.
Yeah,
I like that a lot, actually.
Yeah, I didn't make it up. My spiritual director.
Yeah,
she's smart.
No, I think getting feedback is just a blessing in and of itself. I mean, even with like this little tiny show, you know, Not every day, but I mean, most of the time, one of the guests or somebody connected to one of the guests, or just random people even, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, will message me through Facebook. And yesterday I actually got a really nice message from a guest that made a connection with somebody else, an intimate connection based on
Like
them.
a little date connection?
No.
Oh, okay,
Intimate
okay.
in the sense of like, without spilling their beans all over the table, but trying to still illustrate
They built
the
a
story.
friendship.
They already had an existing relationship with a friend or a
Gotcha.
coworker, and because they've both have been on this show,
The veil was torn.
The veil was torn away, yeah, and so they were able to get to know each other by listening to each
Yeah.
other's episodes, and they have a tighter bond now.
That's cool stuff.
So it was really cool, and I was like, it's a side effect of this I didn't really expect.
Yeah.
And again, it goes back to, if that's all that ever comes from it, then that's great.
For sure.
To know that it just built a tighter bond of love between two friends or coworkers.
So whenever they message you to tell you, like, thank you for that, did that make you feel uncomfortable, or you felt good?
No, honestly, I felt like I got to you just said the word veil. I got a little peek behind the veil, I got a
Yeah.
peek behind like the magic that happens from having conversations that are directed towards particular subjects. I think I always say this on the show, my St. Benedict medal, I don't wear it maybe for the same reason other people do. I wear it because the idea of a man goes into a cave and then comes out of a cave, and wonderful things happen when he comes out. The show's a bit like that, and Finding Good, I think, is like that. I always tell my son, I said, well, we can go into the cave, whether we're having a negative conversation, we're talking about a subject that's painful, or we're having an argument with somebody, but we need to tie a string to ourselves at the door, because going in the cave, you're going to learn all kinds of stuff in there, in that dark place, but you got to have a way out. And if you're lighting lights on the way in, that's even better. And so I think of the show a lot like that, in the regards of, we can go into places and we can have hard conversations, but the ultimate goal of it is to find the light outside, to get out.
Yeah, I think sometimes when you go in the cave, it's easy to forget that you're there, and you think that the cave is just where you've always been.
Yeah, it's the whole world.
Yeah. And you can't get out.
Yeah, well, we can get lost in there.
For sure.
It's nice to have voices out there that you can latch onto. So yeah, I mean, to be honest, and this goes back to, again, being a little bit inspired by you. I remember watching you put yourself out there and thinking, I'm too afraid to do that. But at the same time, feeling a bubble blowing up inside of me that's saying, but you should.
Yeah. in your own way.
You really should. And so for a long time, I kind of just kept that shoveled down, it's buried. And I would watch you do that. And I said, she's so comfortable doing that. I'm just not that comfortable to do that. But I started listening to some podcasts, really, just some people that were also exposing themselves and being honest. And I said, I think I might be able to get behind a microphone. There's something for me. I still struggle with being seen.
Yeah.
Being seen in a picture, being seen, and that I don't know where it comes from. I don't know why. I've been dealing with that my whole life. It honestly only gets worse with age.
Really?
Yeah, it doesn't get better. I find that this is going to get I'm going to get wacky for a minute.
Let's do it.
But like one exercise for me is to just stare at myself in the mirror and not stare at my features. Is to just stare into my own eyes and get to that question that terrifies some people: is who are you?
Oh man.
Like, who are you inside of this eye that I'm looking at?
Yeah.
Like, what's in there that's making anything at all? That's one of my favorite questions, because it's honestly, asking that one question has taken me into so many beautiful places, and ugly places too, but like identity. I'm really fascinated by identity. Like, what makes you? And I'll give you a little example. One morning at one of the Mercy mornings, we were talking about the soul and afterlife, and I was having a conversation with someone there, and I'm going to butcher this story all up, but the nuts and bolts of it are, I got off on one of my little diatribes about that, and I said, I know. I said, because like, what happens? Who am I? Right? My teeth, my brain, my bones, all that stuff, when I die, that is just going to rot in the ground and be dust. So all my thoughts, all my memories that are stored inside this skull,
Yeah.
the stuff of me,
Yeah.
that's all gone. That's going away.
Matter.
The matter is going away. And if
Yeah.
we believe that there's something else, what is that else that is me?
Yeah.
If, and I get into that and I go, that's not terrifying to me. It's fascinating because
Yeah.
then is there something that's me that's still carrying some residue of that identity that is the bones and blood and teeth? But if all of my memories are in my brain, what's that part that's left? And we call it the soul, but surely the soul isn't like my brain.
Right.
The pictures, the thoughts, I don't know. You get into that territory and I'm like, that's the beauty. That's where I start to dive off into God. I go, so that's the part of me that wants to go home, like to be in the bosom of this creative force, this creator, where whatever this mystery is. And I find that to be a lovely thought.
Yeah.
And I got a hand waved in my face and said, we can't think about all that, and just shut me down.
Yeah.
And I kind of chuckle at it now because I realized in that moment that I was just going too far. I was having my mirror talk with another human being.
Yeah.
And it wasn't safe.
Right.
It's too out there.
Yeah.
It was just too weird. And I'm like, and for me, I go, shouldn't we be thinking these things? Shouldn't we be pushing ourselves into that mystery spot that sort of we don't? Because that's a hard question. I'm asking it to you, like, what do you do with that question? Who am I?
Yeah.
Who are you outside of your brains and bone and teeth and skin and hair? The identity of Diana, that's speaking and writing books. It's a heavy question.
It is. And I think that a lot of people live in that question, but I don't think everyone does. And the people who don't dive there are confused about why we're bringing it up.
Why does it matter?
Why? Yeah. That's my husband's favorite thing. Like when I'll be talking about this thing, like, what about this? And what about, he's like, well, it doesn't even matter. I'm like, but it does to me. Like, and he's just like, no, it's okay. You know? And so I have in my life a community of people where I could bring that question and they're all like, I know. And we could all sit there but I didn't always have that community. It's not a huge community. And if we tried to take that conversation out of our little bubble, we would get some weird looks.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You ever Buckminster Fuller?
No.
The guy that, basically you need like dome homes. I'm going to use that as an example. Like a dome home, the geodesic shapes of building.
Yeah.
That comes from him.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell this story.
The actual shape of
the actual design of that kind of architecture comes from some of his thinking. But he had an interesting experience, and I'll butcher it. So please go look it up and get the real story. But the documentary I watched about him when I was younger, I felt like I could relate it to one little thing. And he wanted to die. Yeah. He thought he was young and he thought his life was over, and he was like, I wanted to die. I actually wanted to kill himself. And the way I remember the story is he sits on a hill one day and something happens, and as he's in this thought of I want to die, I want to kill myself, he thinks a thought, and it's this: what if instead of dying, I just lived the rest of my life as if I died today?
Yeah.
And this guy goes from being just a guy, and all this genius opens up in his mind. He starts inventing things. He has this immense knowledge of physics and math and science and just realizations. And you can go online and look. Our modern world is built on tons of things. The Disney Ball, at Epcot. That's a Buckminster Fuller creation. Yeah. And so, I'm fascinated by that because I was like, that gets into that core. Because
what is that? That now there's no, like, why?
He drops his identity, like whoever he was making himself to be, and living his life by the standards of the culture, whatever he was living by, it all just stops.
What if there was just no rules?
What if that was gone and this who is behind the eyes just starts to go, well, now what? Yeah. Now that's over. It's like almost like getting a second life.
Like a rebirth.
Very, very well. There you go. Was he born again in that moment? Not in the Christian sense, but in a different way.
Yeah, he had.
Where does that come from?
Because that's just unlearning. That was him just shedding all of that stuff that he had learned.
God, now that I think about it, I am sure that I told that wrong.
That's okay. I'm into the way
But
you
you
told
need
it.
to
Let's
go.
go
You
with
should
it.
look it up. At least just go do some YouTube research, because I know that there is.
The way you told it was good, though. Let's stick with
I
that.
bet you there's something messed up in there, though.
I'm okay with
It's
it.
been a long time since I looked.
He probably
at
didn't even make the buildings. No,
No, that's all true. But I'm what I fear, and I hate this because I wish I knew more. But I do this sometimes when I start telling stories like that. I think I'm probably telling the part about the way that went down with him having that realization. I don't want people to think that I think the guy was suicidal. That might not be accurate.
Oh, gotcha.
But there's
you
some
know
element
what, though?
of that
Like-
in there in that story.
Like if he was that like evolved, he's probably cool with the fact that you accidentally
he's dead
He's dead
now,
now.
so, but-
Well, he's still probably cool with it. Like
Yeah.
you know, he's not above. You know, when you said that, he's fine with that.
But I think the essence of the story has some merit there. That there is a part. What I guess I get from that is there's a part of us that touches something mysterious and other and beautiful out there, and it almost wants to dump something new in us to make us new. That's where I get there. That's where I start approaching Christianity, and I start going, ooh, I like this idea that there's another self, that there's a higher self, that I can shed this part of myself. I mean, we hear that kind of language in the gospel all the time, especially
Yeah.
Paul. I mean, we watch Paul does this.
Right.
he
Paul's
go-
my favorite, by the
Oh
way.
my gosh. I mean, he goes from one type of being to another type
Yeah.
of being, and it all happens very quickly.
Yeah. I mean, that's
know?
my dude. Like he was making fun of the whole thing, and then he was all about it, and then he wrote some of my favorite, all my favorite books in the New Testament, or all of them. is
Some of
Paul.
that stuff will take you away, man. I mean, and just
Yeah.
really reveal the face of God. I mean, I don't know. So how does that happen,
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I find that fascinating. I think it's beautiful. I want more of that. I want to be able to do that even now, like, to be able to shed those layers and get to that juicy center.
Have you heard a lot about like the ego thing?
I
The
read-
false self.
Yeah, I read a lot about it, and I
do?
mean, I do. I think about it a lot. Actually, it's probably my dominant thought, and it comes from what you said something earlier, way at the beginning of our talk about watching your thoughts and what the judgmental thoughts and all
Yeah.
those things.
Being aware of that.
Yeah, I mean that comes, I guess, from having been in sort of a Buddhist world, because that's very heavy in that particular practice, is to watch the thoughts. The term that I've come to use is the mind is the clear blue sky, and its natural state is the clear blue sky, and thoughts are really just storms and clouds. The blue sky is always there, but we can get caught up in the wind and the rain, and our thoughts are just those things. They're just trying to pass by, and if we don't let them pass by, we can latch on them and call that our identity.
Oh, that is like the best way to explain that. You did that so good.
And I don't want that identity, because it's
Yeah.
full of chaos a lot of times. What do they say in that? The mind is the ox and you're the cart, basically. And you have to get to a point where you're not being led around by the ox of your thoughts. That they're
Yeah.
just kind of pulling you by the nose every which way.
good
Judgment, fear, anxiety. But a lot of times for me, those practices come into play just for daily stressors, and it's usually with other people, where I'm having a feeling or a thought, and it starts to just sound like a little beehive, that warming up of a hive where there's a buzzing, and they're all saying the same thing,
Yeah.
and you get wrapped in all of that. And I like to have a little strengthen the muscles, I guess, of my mind.
You have a gift though, because a lot of that's like self-awareness. That's something you have to work into, your self-awareness of what you're thinking and when you're thinking it and what your thoughts are. There's a lot of people that are walking through life, and they're not self-aware, and people that are self-aware struggle with anxiety because they're aware of what's going on in the thoughts.
You're actually right. My poor wife, again, that's probably it's very close to one of the things that I tell her a lot. I said, I think sometimes there's this back part of me that goes, I just wish I wasn't.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that as like, give me a badge for like
No, I get
self-aware,
what
but
you're
any
saying.
level of self-awareness brings with it more mess in some regards.
Yeah.
And you go, I wish I didn't see this pattern.
For sure.
Or I wish I didn't look down your own timeline and go, oh, these negative thoughts come from this formation of a period of time in my life when I was a child now that I'm aware of it, doesn't make it go away.
Yeah.
So now I get to know why, but I still have to deal with the thing. So it's almost like it's double.
Yeah.
It takes the mystery off, but you're still fighting with the same.
Yeah, you're aware of the problem, but that doesn't make the problem vanish.
Yeah. It's probably the same for anybody struggling with anything: alcoholism, addiction, anger.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that all those things, well, and again, all those things are heavy.
Yeah.
Man, look at us.
I know.
Talking about all kinds of stuff.
I know, self-awareness.
Yeah, I got to look now. We went all over the place. There is one thing I wanted to ask you about, and it was your Bible studies.
Yeah.
Because I brought that up earlier about, hey, I see a sign on the side of the road, and that sign's for me, right? It's for anybody.
Right.
So I see that you were doing that, and I don't know a lot about it, but I got the impression that you were sharing your particular way of reading the Bible or methods that benefit you, and sharing that with other people.
Yeah. So I think something that's true is that those of us who are Catholic or just Christian but aren't really living that out, like we believe there's probably a God and we believe that Jesus Christ died for us, but we're not doing anything with that knowledge. Like we're just kind of like, we don't know how to, we don't know where to, it seems we don't know where to go. Mm-hmm. Those people aren't reading their Bible. And Catholics especially, I think they have not all of us, but maybe I'll speak for myself. There was a point there where I didn't feel like I had been given a permission slip to read. I felt like I needed a permission slip to read my Bible.
What do you mean by that?
Well, because I think other religions, right, they're all about the Bible. They're the Bible. And in Catholicism, the Word of God is married to tradition.
Right.
And so we feel like we're not invited to open up the Bible for ourselves. We can sit in Mass and hear some readings.
Yeah, because it's a part of the liturgy, right?
Huge part. But it's not like, and now a reading from the Bible.
Right.
You can almost, if you're not dialed into it, you don't pay attention.
Why? You even think there's probably people that I've heard Catholics say, I didn't even realize we were reading the Bible this whole time. That's interesting. We don't equate it to that.
And so much more than just the scriptures too. The Mass is all it's all
built right.
Yeah, all of it. But we don't feel, first of all, like we're allowed to, and we don't feel competent enough to open up the Bible for ourselves. And so I hear that a lot, like from women or from people that talk to me, that they don't know how to. They feel like they're scared to misinterpret. They feel like it's boring. And so I wanted to, how me even standing up and saying all of the things that I say where it came from is, I was on a family retreat where we're part of this movement where we go on family retreats once a year to a different state.
Okay.
The whole family. It's called Domestic Church.
Oh yeah, I've heard of Domestic Church.
So, and that's the family retreats. That's where it's at for us. And so I was on the family retreat, and this priest was giving us kind of like a little crash course in how to pray through the Bible, like how to use the Bible for prayer. And I took that and I tweaked it, and I started doing that. I started waking up before everyone in my family woke up, and I started doing that. And that is where all of this came from, where I felt, okay, I want other people to have this. I want other women to feel like they have a permission slip to read the Bible. Other Catholic women, don't be scared. And so I am a person who, I'm not going to tell you the right way to do it, but I'm going to tell you exactly how I do it. So there's no mystery, and you can take that and you can tweak it and use it for your own. Okay. So that's kind of where that started. It's like, look, this is how I read the Bible. This is exactly where I read from. This is exactly what I do with that information. And this is how it's helped me. And so now you can take that and try, and maybe some parts of it will be wonderful for you and some parts of it will suck. Yeah. Just sharing. Tweak it.
Yeah, just sharing with your journey, what you're doing with other people.
Yeah, because I don't like whenever people say like real general things. Like when I'm looking to someone for advice or like guidance, I want you to tell me like, okay, it all began step 1.
Yeah.
step 2. Like, and so that's
Right.
what I'm really big about that. I
Yeah.
try to, and it's not, like I said, it's not from a place like this is the right way. This is not the only way to read the Bible.
Yeah, you just want to know the linear path that
Yeah.
something took. Yeah, how that
How
works.
you get started.
Yeah, no, I agree. You can jump into the middle of an idea or something that's off in left field, and you go, okay, I'm missing something here.
Yeah.
You know, I even thought that. I mean, most of the religions that I've studied have started with coming in it from a sideways.
Have you studied all this? You're telling just like my dad. My dad has studied like every religion.
I don't know about every, but what happens for me is I'll be studying one,
Yeah.
and then I usually I hear something. Well, what happens after you do a lot of that kind of study is, I talked about this with somebody else the other day. I said it's kind of like learning another language, and you start to hear somebody talking in another language, and then you pick up on it. After you've learned that language, you start to go, oh, I understand what they're saying now. And you understand that maybe they're using a different word, but they're saying the same word that you're using in your language. That's what happened for me when I started reading and studying other religions. It was just sort of diverse and dense, and I guess it can be a problem too, especially if you're claiming one faith, because then you start to just see common ground everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, you start to go, oh, you know, like for instance, the two big silos that I kind of landed in was really Mahayana Buddhism, which out of the Tibetan culture is where really my primary attraction really went. Oddly enough, studying that religion is what led me to studying Catholicism.
Yeah, and let's just take a moment there, because that's back to the God in a box thing. Because if someone's gonna poo-poo all over that, like, now you're discarding how you even got here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. I can't throw that out because that
And
wasn't junk.
And
I mean, it wasn't just trash.
other people aren't allowed to say that satanic crap about that.
Right. Now, will I say this? I'll say this from a Western, a traditional Western Christian. I'm not even going to say a Catholic Christian.
Yeah.
I would actually say a Catholic Christian should have less of a hard time looking at particularly Tibetan Buddhism and not having a hard time with it. Visually, you're going to see some similarities there. You're going to see a lot of things where you're going to go, I don't know exactly what's going on, but it does look alone, just on the surface. I mean,
Yeah.
lots of paintings, lots of imagery, lots of symbols, lots of tradition and ritual.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to see patterns, you're going to see cycles, you're going to see rules and structure and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I always loved looking into those two things and going, oh, these two things are the same, or this concept is similar. Especially when you get into saints, the writing of saints and church fathers and people who weren't right at the blast zone of Christ, you know, who,
Yeah.
you know, as you get the rings grow out.
But then don't you think too, like when people respond in that way, like, oh, I'm glad you're away from that crap or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's them responding from a place of not knowing.
Right.
And
right.
I think one of the, like we talked about my dad and Santa Claus and all of that stuff, one of the best things my dad ever taught me in life is that when you don't know something, you say you don't know it.
Yeah.
And,
right.
And that's hard for us, but it can be revolutionary.
Yeah.
Like if someone says, what's your opinion about this thing? And if you say, you know, I really haven't learned enough to form an opinion.
Sure.
Why don't more
What's
people
wrong with
say
that?
that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you on that. I think it's better. There's a line from the Tao Te Ching, and I think I just posted it the other day because it's stuck in my mind years ago. It was, I alone don't know, I alone don't care. My mind is empty. Sometimes I'm like a fool.
Yeah.
And I sometimes have to think that because it reminds me of what you just said. I don't know enough about, just like you said about we pulled that card in the last episode, socialism.
Yeah.
I know what I know about socialism, but I don't know what I don't know.
Right.
And I have to be willing to go, I'm probably not fully prepared to have an elevated conversation about
Yeah.
this, but it doesn't mean I need to demonize
For
the
sure.
thing because I just don't know.
For sure.
You know, that's what a lot of the problems we all have is just that.
The problem.
We don't know what we don't know.
For sure.
And we don't take a pause. We get offended when someone challenges the limits of our knowledge.
Yeah.
Instead of getting offended, it's worth, and God, we have resources now. What time in human history have we ever been able to go look something up as quickly as we can
Whatever
and just
you
go,
want for free. Yeah.
I can go learn a little bit about this. Yeah, I don't know. It does get into a lot of what you were talking about reading the Bible, actually. There's so many weird issues in there because on one hand, you have branches of Christianity that say the Bible is the Word of God.
Right.
And that it's the Word.
Right.
And then you have like the Catholic Church that says, well, Jesus is the Word of God. The Bible is the books. But ultimately, the Word is Christ.
Yeah.
And then the church says it has authority for interpreting the scriptures.
Right.
You know, and
I think
dissenting.
Catholics think the Bible is the Word of God too. Like I don't, but I think where it's different is that maybe, I don't know. Maybe other religions say the Bible is the Word of God. And that's all we've got right now in this moment. And maybe Catholicism says the Bible is the Word of God, and we've got a few other things.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. It's funny because the priest and I were having this conversation a couple of years ago because he had kind of confessed to me that he was a Taoist before he became a priest.
Okay, I wanted to ask you that because I don't know a lot about Buddhism, but my brother loves the book of Tao, but it's spelled...
Oh, the Tao Te Ching.
No. It's the book of Tao, or maybe not, but it's spelled Tao.
Tao, yeah.
Okay, that is Buddhism.
Well, no, not necessarily. That comes out of China. The author's name is Lao Tzu. Now, that you can go off a cliff with that because there's some people say didn't exist, some people say did exist,
cool.
But it's a really ancient text. The easiest way to say that to get into Buddhism from Taoism is that
they're not the same.
They're not the same, but Zen Buddhism, which, you know, again, like any religion, it spreads in different lands.
Right.
You've got, which is the fusion of Buddhist thinking and Taoist thinking, and then you sort of get into Zen Buddhism, that territory. Yeah. So it's I think the Tao Te Ching is beautiful. I mean, I still read it today. It's lovely. Now, it would offend some sensitive ears because it says things like, for lack of a better word, I call it the Tao. The Tao is older than God. Well, there again, you hit that English translation of the Tao is older than God. You're immediately going to put some people right in their tracks. It never did that to me. I try to not be offended by things like that because I feel like sometimes you just need to push through. You might be just dealing with a language barrier, a lack of something that doesn't translate properly.
Yeah. Or do we have to even if it was translated perfectly, do we have to throw the whole thing out?
Right. Don't throw the whole thing out.
Yeah.
Because you're right there at a gate to a lot of beautiful language and some interesting revelations about the nature of what God has built, in my opinion, like the nature of reality, the way things are, you know? And so it is a very beautiful, plain. It says some beautiful things like that are confusing, but I think they're lovely. Like, that which has no substance enters where there is no space. Now, it's something you could just sit and think about that
long time.
One line. But when I hear that, I go, what enters where there is no space?
Yeah.
Does God have substance?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it makes me ask questions that I find interesting to think about. You know, does God have substance? And what can enter in something that has no space? I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
That's the Tao, you know, and that's kind of that book's sort of the crux of the whole thing. You go, wow, this is the mystery things. Like it talks about we form a bowl, but we don't actually use the bowl. We use the space inside of it. This
is the type of stuff my brother is so much smarter than me. He really is. And he thinks about all of these cool things and loves talking. And this conversation reminded me a lot about him. And he reads a lot. He's a big reader. And he read something about the Tao and then the Tao of Pooh.
Yeah, that's a love. One of our guests talked about that book and loves that book. My wife gave my sister a copy of that for Christmas.
Yeah, he talks about, I mean, and he's just a smart, really kind, you know how there's people in the world that like just the fiber of who they are and nothing that they've done, just the fiber of who they are is good.
Yeah.
And like there's other people where that's not as obvious, or maybe you don't feel like it's as obvious in us.
Yeah.
My brother is one of those people.
There are books in the Bible that sound like that, like the Tao Te Ching. I mean, the Book of Wisdom is in Sirach. I mean, you get into that territory. Ecclesiastes. I mean, if I had to pick one book out of the Bible to read for the rest of my life, it would be tough. It would be between Wisdom and Ecclesiastes, but I'd probably have to go with Ecclesiastes because it just is in that language category. And Christ talks like that too. I mean, we hear him say things, about the rain and the sun shining on the saint and the sinner alike. The Tao Te Ching talks exactly like that. I hear his voice in there. And so when I hear his voice in a place like that, I can't disregard it. I go, this is so close. Is Christ's voice wisdom? Right? Mm-hmm. Is it really wisdom? And if it is really wisdom and it really is divine, can that voice be leaking into other human beings throughout history where God was talking to them? And I don't know. That to me is the beauty, and that's what I love about religions, I think, is that some people go, oh, religion. I really actually can't stand it when I hear people say organized religion and they start throwing it under the bus and saying it's caused every war in human history and all the violence. That's true.
Yeah.
But they are also keepers of the flame of some really beautiful and wise things that without them we might just be lost to the winds of time.
Yeah.
Ancient manuscripts and just places for people like God, who I think is a modern day saint, Thomas Merton. I mean, lovely thinker and philosopher, finds God in the Catholic Church and writes words that frustrate a lot of Catholic thinkers, but God's, I really think, talking through this man, and I just go, that's what religion's really good at, is giving people a place to go drink from a well, and get some good stuff in their life. You said it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What's the path I got to take to get some good? Religions are very good at that, and giving us, Buddhism's good at it. The Eightfold Path, the 3 jewels. It's ordered, it's numbered. It's something I can go do. I can bake this cake, follow this recipe, and potentially get the same result as a great saint.
For sure.
Or a holy man, or someone wonderful.
Yeah, I think the whole thing, like how people say they have a hard time with religion and corruption, like that's one of my dad's things I remember him saying when we were growing up, is just how religion and money and corruption and whatever, and those things could be true too. I mean, those things are true. They're true
in everything.
For sure.
Every institution.
Because we've inserted our own little messed up selves in those things, and anytime that we're a part of those things, we're going to mess them up. But like if you have a question and you have this need to answer it in some way, even if it's not fully or completely answered, we as people, like, religion gives you a place to go to start digging into that answer.
Yeah.
And if not, then we're just like sitting with our own self and our own thoughts, right? And that's good too, but it's good to introduce things that are other to that figuring out process.
Totally agree.
And I'm happy, I know it.
This episode's Fishing for Goodies fishbowl sponsor is Brimstone Museum and Henning Cultural Center in Sulphur, Louisiana. I don't know what you look for when you travel, but one of the things I look for when I'm putting together my itinerary is a unique museum or gallery in the city I'm traveling to. I do this almost every time I go to a new city, but if I'm being honest, I'm guilty of not always doing that very thing right here at home in Sulphur, Louisiana. That's really a shame, because we have one of the most interesting, historically relevant, and culturally rich corners in any city in the country about 2 minutes from where I'm sitting right now. I'm talking about the Brimstone Museum and Henning Cultural Center. Have you ever really thought about why our city is named Sulphur? They've got a permanent exhibit on the history of the sulfur industry that answers that simple question and more. You really get a full scope of just how important the sulfur mining industry was to the development of Southwest Louisiana and the impact it had on the rest of the world. Yes, the rest of the world. On the same property, right next door to the museum, is the Henning Cultural Center, presenting some of the most interesting, modern, and culturally relevant local art shows I've ever seen. My dear friend Tom Trahan and the Brimstone Historical Society have really worked hard to give us this treasure, and it's a multifaceted jewel that I plan to take advantage of more often. You don't have to wonder what their hours are, or how to get there, or what shows are coming up. Just go to brimstonemuseum.org like I did, and subscribe to their mailing list right there on the homepage. That's brimstonemuseum.org. Tom will make sure you start getting the announcements for each and every new show at the gallery. But you don't have to wait for the mail to arrive to enjoy this historical local treasure. You don't have to be guilty, like me, of overlooking a local wonder that conveniently sits next to the Grove, one of the most beautiful walking parks in Southwest Louisiana. Drop in and say hi to Tom for me. Tour the museum and center, and make sure to tell Tom that you heard about Brimstone Museum on Find the Good News. Now, let's take that dive in the fishbowl. Man, this has been a good conversation.
Yeah.
It's time to dig in the fishbowl, though.
Okay. So do I just pull something
You can
out?
pull 3 questions out.
Okay. I hope it's not about socialism.
Oh my gosh, I could.
There's so much in here.
I know there's a lot. That's
This is all sent in?
No, not all of them.
Some of them are just you want to know.
Yeah.
Oh, how cute. Okay, so should I pick all 3 and then answer?
It's however you want to do it.
Okay, let's see what we're working with.
It's kind of fun, right? Just even picking the questions.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so into these questions already. Okay.
Really? You got good ones?
Yeah. Okay.
Good.
My favorite one of the. Okay, so we have 3. Let's see. It says, are you more talk and less action, or vice versa? That's so easy.
Okay.
I am for sure more talk.
Really?
Yeah. Isn't that kind of sad?
Well, no, not necessarily. Talking is potentially your gift, right?
Yeah, I think so. But that can also be bad.
How often do you turn it into action, though? I mean, is that always your goal? I'm going to say it, and then I'm going to try it.
I think the words are built from the action. So I think the action happens first, and then but if we're looking at just the amount at which I talk about it and the amount at which I do it, the amount I talk about it is way more. Because I'm just talking all the time. Those 2 things are can't even be equal.
But you've done the thing, is what you're saying. You took an action, you've got a result from it, and you're going, I might need to share
Let me share this,
okay.
yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
But then I talk about it for like 3 years, but I did it one time.
Yeah, no, I get you. I actually could say the same thing. I mean, I would like to tell everybody, I meditate deeply every day. I pray deeply every day. That's not true.
Yeah.
Some days, my whole meditation is staring at a Coke can on the side of the road and thinking about, how did that Coke can get there?
Yeah.
What was its journey? Who's drank from it?
Yeah.
When did this start? Why did we invent? What is aluminum a good product to use? Could we save the world if everything was? That's a meditation for me, and then allowing my mind to go quiet. But that's all I got the whole day. So that's junk for some people. They're like, man, that's not meditation. That's not prayer.
That
hey,
counts.
Man,
whatever.
That's what I got today. That's what I had time for.
Yeah, I know that counts. I'm gonna go.
I like that. More talk or more action, but that you generate the talk from the action.
See, and my husband is like more action, and like he like whispers like one sentence, but like he spends the rest of his life doing.
Yeah. Well, it takes all of us doing and talking.
For sure. Okay, would you ever donate a kidney to anyone? For sure. I'd donate a kidney to anybody that needed one. Like, that one's easy.
Answer.
Well, that's easy. As long as I'm not pregnant or nursing a child, that's easy. Anybody needs one. Let's do it. Who is your hero of fiction?
Ooh, fiction.
Who is your fictional hero? Oh, man. Let me think about that one. I don't know if I have a hero of fiction, but I have a favorite fictional book.
What is it?
And I read it when I was young, and it continues to be my favorite fictional book, The Giver.
The Giver.
Yes. And you know why? And still to this day, I love people that are listening to this know what The Giver is. It's Lois Lowry's book on the dystopian society.
Yeah, there's a movie about that, right?
Yeah, and they made a movie recently. And to this day, my favorite movies are dystopian and utopian societies.
Really?
They are.
Ooh, tell me some more about that.
I don't know why, Just maybe the idea of what something could be, where it's so different from what it is now.
So, like, you like The Handmaid's
fascinates me.
Tale?
Love The Handmaid's Tale.
1984.
I haven't read 1984.
Oh my gosh.
I
Don't
know.
read it unless you want to be terrified,
Okay, I'm
because
not.
it's like prophetic.
I know, I heard that
It's
recently.
crazy. Yeah.
But yeah, I love it in not a way where like I love it and like I'm drinking a cup of coffee and like taking a nap.
It
Like
just
it's challenging.
gets into
it's
you, yeah.
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
The Handmaid's Tale, you don't watch that like for stress-free watching.
No, you're right.
But it's just so interesting, like that something like our world today could be so different,
Yeah.
and what that could look like.
Power structures, too. A lot of those
Yeah.
dystopian
Like those
stories.
movies where like the kids are running in the maze.
Oh, yeah, The Maze Runner.
That's like,
Yeah.
I love that type of stuff.
Interesting.
So the Giver is my favorite
Of that genre. That's your...
of fiction.
Oh,
my
of
favorite
all
fictional book
fiction.
of all time.
Really?
Isn't that weird?
No,
And I read it when I was
no.
younger, and I think it's because I was in a place where I was so young when I read it that whenever you get to the end of the book and you realize that the babies are actually dying, it blew, like I didn't see the lead up. You know, like as an adult, you can kind of read that book and say, huh, that's weird. I wonder where this is going.
Yeah.
There's something fishy there.
Yeah.
But when I was a kid, I was reading it and I wasn't aware of that like lead up. And so when that happened at the end, where, oh, this is actually what's happening to these babies, is there?
Yeah.
It blew my mind in a way
Yeah.
that I was like, oh, this could, like, the world could be like this.
Yeah.
It is this thing
'Cause
now.
it's just people that makes it that way.
Yeah, it is this thing now,
Decisions.
but it has the propensity to be something completely different.
It's interesting how much of that type of stuff they feed us when we're young, too. Those types of stories.
Yeah, like that's inappropriate, people.
But like, look, I mean, we read Lord of the Flies.
Yeah.
We read Animal Farm.
Yeah.
The one that really, when I was a kid, that I don't know if it would even fall in that genre, but it stuck with me, was that little short story, The Lottery. Do you remember that?
Wait, no.
So-
Isn't that kind of like the what's that movie that everybody likes now with the woman that shoots the arrow?
Oh, The Hunger Games.
Isn't that kind of Hunger
I guess
Games-y?
kind of. Yeah, it's that there's everybody's going to the lottery, and it's something this society does in this little community.
I think I read that in college. Is it a short story?
Yeah, it's a short story.
I read that in
but
college.
we read that in high school,
That's
and
my
I mean, I
jam.
was like, my goodness, I don't know. And I'm going, they're feeding us this stuff as
Yeah.
kids, and so you can't not be terrified of authority
Yeah.
to some degree. And why would you want to fit into this? Because these people are making terrible decisions.
Yeah.
You're going along with it because it's going with the herd. You're going along with it because
Yeah.
everybody does it. And then you get to the end and there's this big flip and you're like, whoa.
And it's so cool too for us, like now we look at all of those things like The Handmaid's Tale, like
Yeah.
for example, we look at things like that and we're like, okay, like that's so crazy and not even, whatever. But it doesn't happen like overnight. Like they don't overnight say, okay, and now we're going to do this. It's
Right. Little
little
things.
tiny steps where you don't even notice. You don't even notice it's happening.
Now you're talking about that, and I got to say, I mean, we see that in our world right now.
Yeah, we really do.
Accept a little bit of distrust, accept a little bit of fear.
Yeah.
Don't like this person, follow this rule, don't follow that one.
Right.
And then one by one, you bend it, and then it doesn't look like what it used to look like.
Yeah, and don't you think, like, as Americans, too, we're real, like, snobby. So we think that can't happen to us.
Right.
We're like, oh, we're good.
Right.
We're fine.
Well, yeah, and when historically, if you really look at the long arm of history, I read a quote by Thomas Merton this morning, actually, or maybe yesterday, but he taught, and I'm going to, again, precursor, probably going to butcher this.
Was there a suicide in this, too?
There's no suicide
Okay.
in this, but this is just, he was talking about the way we look at history, and he said we tend to look at history is a movie, but we tend to look at one frame of it, and we judge the whole movie based on the one frame.
Yeah.
And we forget that the movie is a reel that's moving, and we're caught on the reel.
Yeah.
And it's not the right way to look at history. And I was like, yeah, that's a good way to put that, because it's kind of what I feel like we're in danger of doing right now in this country, is looking at this one moment in time and not looking at the longer view of it. One, if you look at the longer view, you could probably avoid a lot of we're repeating some of the same problems. We're dragging up problems that we were on our way to resolving.
Yeah. And don't you think, like, we were we're in this weird space too in our country where we're being like invited to change in a real meaningful way, to be more aware of things, to just shed all of the preconceived notions we had and be better.
Yeah.
And like there's some like equal force that's like saying like no.
Yeah. Well, it's a dissent. It's a force of dissent. And I mean, talking about it in that perspective, I mean, if you talk about it from a spiritual perspective, and you believe that there are spiritual forces all around us, and look, spiritual beings all around us. I mean, you're Catholic.
Yeah.
I'm Catholic. We profess to believe that there's beings.
Right.
I mean, my friend Chad, he used to make this funny joke, and I laugh. I go, God, you're so right. He goes, he said, think about it, man. He said, when you're kids, you go to Sunday school and they give you a color sheet with Noah, and it's like, go color Noah, go color all the animals and color the rainbow. He's like, dude, that story's terrifying.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a scary story.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a message of hope at the end, but he said it's really, when you get in the details of it, scary. Angels are that way for me.
Sure.
I'm like, cute angel, with flowers and daisies, and sweet little fat angel over the bed. Have you really sit and think about what an angel may be?
Yeah.
Blows my mind. That's like a tear. I have to close my eyes sometimes.
Because like whenever we like draw a pic, like for us to depict what an angel is, we always like throw a human and put some wings on it. But like in reality, if angels don't have bodies and they're just beings.
And some of those descriptions, like in Ezekiel and stuff like that, you're going, okay, this is. And you see someone try to paint that, and it's like, what am I looking at?
Yeah,
it's terrifying.
Yeah,
there's nothing cute about that.
No.
So I mean, if you believe that there is a reality where these beings are all around us, I mean, we say it. There's an angel on everybody's shoulder. Everybody's got their own guardian angel. What in the heck does that look like?
Yeah.
What is that? So is the world, I guess, consumed in these forces from that perspective, right?
Yeah. Okay, I gotta tell you this. The movie, I gotta look it up because I'm not gonna remember. The fictional movie that I have to watch every once in a while whenever I'm having those like elbow deep in the sink moments and they're lasting longer than just a moment. Like they're kind of like dragging out and scaring me, and I'm like, oh, I gotta get back to the right. This movie that I watched that is not a faith movie in the slightest, and I'm trying to think of the dang movie that really brings me back to the fact that there is this whole other reality, that our reality is not the only reality, right? If God lives outside of time and space, and he is everywhere and he's nowhere, and he's experiencing time not linearly like we do, but he experiences it in some weird way that blows our mind. This movie that I watch with reminds me of that. It's with.
I can't wait to hear what this is.
Yeah,
you're just teasing me to death.
You're gonna be like, "Hey, what? Where did you get this from?" Okay, it's the movie where he goes into space, and Anne Hathaway's in this movie. And there's bookshelves, and they're throwing the
Interstellar.
Interstellar.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
The movie is Interstellar.
Yeah.
That movie is the movie I watch to remember that my perception of reality is not the end-all, be-all of life.
Yeah. No, I hear you. That's a good one. I actually listened to this guy on a podcast the other day, and I wouldn't advocate what he did, but he has a documentary out called Psychonautics.
Yeah.
Where he did extremely high doses of different psychedelic drugs, primarily for research. But what he talked about is the experiences of the inner world that you go through. He said something that I thought was fascinating. He said, he lived thousands of different lives.
Wow.
Full lives.
Yeah.
Okay. Thousands and thousands. He said, I might live a whole life as Joe Blow, but then my next life that I would live would be somebody that I encountered as Joe Blow, and I get to live from that perspective and see myself. It was just this trippy stuff.
While he's on these drugs.
Right. He said, but what's crazy about that is you're talking thousands upon thousands of whole lifetimes with all the memories of that. And then as you start to come down, he's on the couch where he started, and no time has passed at all. And it gets into what you said about timelessness, the perception of time. He's like, I perceive all this time passing, but 30 minutes have passed, and I'm ancient feeling in my mind from this whole
That's like that other movie, Inception.
Yeah,
Yes.
right. That kind of stuff, and that's both the same director.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, is it?
Yeah, Christopher Nolan. Yeah.
Inception and
Interstellar.
I must love Christopher Nolan.
Yeah. Have you seen? We're getting off on another topic, but have you seen Memento,
I don't think so.
where the guy experiences time in reverse? He has memory loss.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, that's another
one. Is that
one.
Christopher Nolan?
Yeah, it's his
I'm gonna
first
go
first
watch it.
film. You should go check it out.
Yeah.
It's in that same category of perception as reality. But you're right. That you're just getting off into that. When we think of God that way, outside of space and time, that is something we just have a hard time wrapping our mind around.
But
It's
that's
very, very interesting.
and that's like whenever you hear somebody that's rooted in disbelief or unbelief, somebody that's an atheist, they hear us Christians talk about God. Like I said, like we thought about him when we were like in kindergarten, where he was this dude
Easter
with a
Bunny.
white beard,
Yeah.
sitting in the clouds on a chair. Well, for anybody that has any sort of like, intelligence, that just, that seems weird. That's not really,
Right.
it can't get behind that. But whenever you're talking about this thing that is all being, that is everywhere, always, that operates outside of time and space, somebody that has somebody that's smart, they can get behind that. They could start diving into that,
Well, then you're
thinking
getting
about that.
realm of physics. I mean, and all that
Yeah.
stuff, and you start to see sort of the proof of some things that
For sure.
are very mysterious.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think again, in fact, you're kind of sitting you're sitting in front of that right there, which is a
Yeah.
painting of, that's Jesus.
Oh,
Yeah. Would you have known that?
no.
See,
why
that-
does Jesus have such long earlobes?
Well, this is what I read about this. The artist. I was about to say the author.
I see the wounds. Yeah.
He's a Catholic priest, and what he does is he paints images of Christ that are influenced by other cultures. And this comes, I don't know if you've seen the film Silence, where the Jesuits go to Japan, the Jesuit
No.
missionaries. They were forced to basically say that they didn't believe in Christ and that Christ wasn't real by the Japanese government.
Okay.
Because they didn't want Christianity in their country.
Yeah.
And so he talked about this artist talks about that when he paints these things. He says, if we'd went in there and utilized the culture, then it would have made it a lot easier, because instead of feeling like an invader or colonizer, you come in with something that's heavy-handed that doesn't have any reflection of the culture. And so he paints these things because he said, really, and the Catholic Church is a great example of that, Christianity begins to take root in Rome. So Roman artists begin
Right.
to interpret Christ. So that's why people always say, oh, how come Christ is a white guy and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff. And
yeah.
I go, well, do a little research. It's the imprint of the culture upon Christ.
Yeah.
They didn't paint him like a Hebrew
Right.
from the desert.
Right.
Because that wasn't their culture. They made it palatable.
It's
They
like when
painted him
Mary appears places. She always appears, like if you believe in the apparitions of Mary, she always appears in the general dress
of the culture.
people.
Yeah.
And that and Mary and their apparitions, and if that's how you go into people, that is what I was talking about closing the gap, about not making this big huge ocean.
Yeah.
That is how that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a great way to say it, and I'll just say it bluntly. I will have this deep belief that when Christ appears in the world, he appears in a way that is palatable to and for the people that he's appearing to. Because if he's appearing to them in a way that isn't palatable,
Yeah.
if he's God and God is wisdom, God
Right.
knows that people are not going to be drawn to something that is alien.
Right.
The alien other, this thing that's outside of us to fear. And if God is love, wouldn't he appear in a loving way? So yeah, I think images like that for me are very important, because
Yeah.
it shows that all the same symbols are there, but it's using the symbols of that culture to appeal to people. So if you present Christ to people this way, you're still getting the core messages there.
Yeah.
But they go, oh, I can approach this, So it arose out of that need to do that. I actually love a lot of his artwork is for sale, and I can't think of his name now. It's escaping me, but he does that for different cultures. Native American Christ.
That's awesome.
I don't know. Just it gets into that territory of and some people say it tiptoes into universalism, which is a heresy, supposedly.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just think, why not? Why not? When we rewrite the Bible's in English. Come on.
For sure.
I mean, it that in and of itself
Yeah.
is a translation. Why wouldn't we translate the images and icons?
And then what is like what is the line in the sand? Is it either you don't, is it either you don't do it, so you don't bring this Jesus to this culture that's not familiar with it, or you do it in a way that's not going to work,
Right.
or do you try to do it in this way that meets the person where they are?
Yeah, accompaniment. There you go.
Literally.
Again, getting back to
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's lovely. I do have one more question for you. It's not in the fish bowl, but it's on the back side of that coffee mug there that belongs to you.
Oh, is it mine?
Yeah.
Did anything good happen today? Yes, of course. This conversation has been good.
Good.
Yeah, and then my husband also got the kids ready without me, so that's great.
Oh, that's
wonderful.
a big help too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is good stuff. I'm glad you're doing this.
Well, I'm glad you wanted to come on the show.
Yeah.
That's weird. I was kind of a confession letting you know that, you did kind of inspire some of that.
Well, I love that. I knew you before then, though.
No?
Yeah, I don't know why I was in Fusion 5, but I was. Becky Girola.
Oh, the business group.
Yes.
Yeah, Becky Girola.
I was friends with Becky, and I don't remember what I was doing at the time that I felt like I needed to be in Fusion 5, but I was in it. And
was that a long time ago, or was it?
A long time ago.
Oh, okay.
I had just moved to Lake Charles, probably.
Okay.
And so I didn't meet you or anything. I don't think we spoke or anything.
Okay.
But I knew that you had Parker Brand from that.
Oh, from Becky.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I had met her and her husband. I think he's at Northwest Mutual.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she was on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a good talk.
Yeah, she is energy personified.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And Becky, for me, I love when people open up and share their stories, because she's shared stuff about her life that you just go, if you just blow by Becky, you get the cliff notes.
Yeah.
And you can sum her up however you want to, whatever your
Yeah.
experience is, and then not go any further. But then when you just peel that little layer off and you go, wow, there's these defining things, and they weren't always lovely.
Yeah, because she carries herself with such positivity that you think that she's had it's been fine for her.
Yeah.
But that's like a choice for her.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
She's made it's alchemy. She turned lead into gold,
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I love it when people are willing to do that. You've done a lot of that today.
Have I? I hope so.
Yeah, I think so. I know that you talk to people a lot, but hopefully some of your fans will listen.
Yeah.
And then they'll maybe learn something that they didn't know. And then new people, you never know. And we might get a little blowback for some of the stuff we talked about too.
Okay.
You never know.
I'm learning to be okay with that. I realized pretty recently, that I was showing up in the world, but I kept waiting for someone to correct me. Like I was kept waiting to get like a message from a priest.
Yeah,
or
I was actually going to ask you that, but I didn't.
Like a message from a priest or somebody that I would listen to their opinion more than just Joe Blow off the street saying, hey, you're doing some real harm here.
Yeah.
I've been operating out of that, waiting for that to happen.
Yeah.
And then when that happens, then I have to be quiet, obviously. What other choice is there? Mm-hmm. And just recently I'm realizing if that ever happens, that doesn't have to be the end of it. Like, I need to put myself out there in a way that I'm not just waiting for someone to say I'm wrong and I suck. I need to show up in the way that I'm being called to show up and be okay with whatever happens after. Because whatever happens after is not my business.
Yeah. I relate, and I'm still afraid.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Still afraid of that. On some level, someone's going to hear something you say, or you're going to be too honest. And what's crazy is I wonder sometimes if where the blowback would come from, if they don't have any of the same thoughts ever, or if they're just hiding them, or they don't feel safe, and then it's easier to just go, well, I'm just not going to say that I had the same doubt, fear, worry, concern, curiosity.
I think if they ever do,
I
think if they ever do have those thoughts, they're like I said, they're so scared that that's the one thing that's going to make it all come crumbling down.
Yeah.
Like the one thing that if they say that that thing, or if they say something that's wrong or whatever, then what's the point of all of it?
Yeah.
And so then let's just pretend like it's not even a thing.
Yeah. Well, it's good to know that you haven't really received any of that kind of...
Not yet. Maybe after this, we'll see.
Well, maybe. You never know. That's not the goal for sure. But, I mean, you just never know.
Right. Yeah.
Never know.
And I'm sure, and I mean, think about it. To be out there and putting yourself out there and saying all of these things and not receive that, I mean, that's unlikely. Yeah. That's part of putting yourself out there.
Yeah. I try to remember this, and it's very, very simple, and it's not some fancy saying, but it's just to remember the words love, compassion, mercy, kindness.
Yeah.
And those 4 words for me, if I'm ever really getting wound up and muddled in my thinking, or if I'm taking an action, or if I'm going down talking about something or some, you know, I can tend to think I have some great ideas, you know. But
yeah.
when I get down that path, sometimes I try to find those road signs along the way, and those words, you know, love, mercy, compassion, kindness, is what I'm doing in alignment with those things, really. And that's easy to have an internal conversation and kind of course correct. You know, they're, I guess, my 4 cardinal directions, you know.
And to your intention too, like sometimes your outer behavior looks good. Like if anyone else were to grade it by love and mercy and all of those things, that'd be fine. But it would pass. But you know your intention with the thing. And if your intention with the thing still isn't love and mercy, even though it looks like it passes all the check marks, is that, you know?
It's a wax apple.
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
Okay, so how do people follow you and find you and all that good stuff?
So the website is dianadivulges.com. I do, my social media platform of choice is Instagram, just because I feel like it has a certain level of positivity to it that maybe Facebook doesn't.
I think you're right. Yeah.
And that's at Diana Divulges. But I'm on Facebook too.
Yeah.
And Diana Vallette, last name Vallette, and I share some stuff there too.
Yeah.
Though I have to be very careful about what I consume there, because
Facebook?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. This show came out of that for me. Consumption of information, you know?
Yeah.
I've tried to tune the dials, and I'm constantly doing it. You know, I hate that feeling when I go, you know, I just think I need to unfollow this voice that is in my feed, or I don't like doing that. It seems silly, but I mean,
I think that's important. Like, I kind of make it a rule when I'm operating as my best self, my most peaceful self. On Facebook, I'm consuming almost nothing. I'm producing things.
Yeah, there you go.
But I'm not consuming anything on Facebook.
I see. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I wish I could say that I do consume some things, but it's gotten better. I mean, I think for me, when I don't like to tune out actual news, but I also don't really like to have a lot of political stuff, you know. And I'm starting to get to the point now where I'm going, hey, look, this is how I feel about a certain thing, and I believe this. Again, love, mercy, kindness, compassion. Is my feeling in alignment with those things on a particular subject?
Yeah.
And if something's coming into my feed that's just really dark and negative in regards to a certain subject, I just go, okay, look, this isn't alignment anymore. I have a choice to turn this channel off.
Right.
You know, now you're in your particular avenue. I see Instagram as more positive, but also I see on Facebook you have some really interesting conversations that happen in your threads.
Yeah, I think I think I'm able to reach more people on Facebook. I guess just because of the logistics of how the social media platform works. Like, you can share and you can tag and you can.
Yeah.
So I think I'm able to reach more people on Facebook with the message that I have, but I don't know, it's more open to debate that way.
Yeah.
And I'm not good at that.
Yeah. Well, you can tailor. I see this a lot. You having a conversation like we're having right here, you kind of got to pull it right out of yourself. But when you're on something like Facebook, it's easy to look at something somebody wrote and go, well, I disagree with that, but let me go and really tailor a super sharp rebuttal. I can really hone the edge on this knife and then stick it to them. And I say that way because I see it so often, and as I used to do it, you know. I'm sometimes guilty still, and trying to stop that. Actually, one of the things that I got into as a way to kind of quell that was starting to write haikus and saying, okay, I'm going to force myself to say anything in haiku format.
Yeah.
You know, and when I do that, I have a container. I can't go on this long, you know, sharpening journey. I can just say a simple thing, and who the heck even knows what I'm talking about anyway, you know, in the context of what it is. So it's been an interesting exercise. I gave myself a year to see if that changes the way I communicate at all and what kind of responses come back. Most of the time, none. So
that's okay.
It's interesting, you know?
Yeah, recently I was, usually I'm a person that responds. Like, I'm like, let me go ahead and school you, show you how smart I am and right I am.
Right.
And so recently somebody posted something about immigration on their news feed, and underneath the comments, somebody said something along the lines of, well, go to Walmart and look around and you can see the problem. Right? And what I'm assuming that person meant is, if you go to Walmart and you look around, you can see a lot of brown people now in our community, right?
Yeah.
And so, and I'm a brown gal. My dad's from Cuba. My mom's from Puerto Rico. I'm the first person in my family to be born in the United States. And so, like, what I wanted to say to that racist comment was so many things, you know?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that, sir? Or are you trying to say this thing? Or let me school you on whatever. And instead, what I said was the thing that I didn't want to say, which was nothing. And I just let it sit there. And I'm not about saying, like, the right thing is always to let it sit there, or the right thing is always to stand up, or I think the right thing is different, and that's situational, right? But when I know that when I walked away from that conversation, I felt more peace in that than I would have if I'd have been, like, checking my notifications to see if that person messaged back and let me prove you wrong and whatever. And maybe, like, in a week or 2 weeks, something similar will come up and I'll comment on that. Yeah. And we'll have a conversation. Yeah. But I think that, I don't know. I think it's good to push yourself. Yeah. If what you really want to do is school somebody, if you just shut up.
It's interesting, that word, what you're saying there about schooling somebody. I recently had an incident that went from online to offline. I was in a conversation that was negative, and I was trying to bring some positive points into it, and somebody in my real life jumped in and made a really negative, painful, personal attack. Yeah. Because they knew personal things that were painful to our family. Right. And it put me in an awkward situation, because I thought, well, this is sort of a bait situation where they want to have this gotcha online. And I was like, I don't want to do this. I'm going to go talk to them face to face and go, hey, look, that's not cool. If we're friends, let's just not do that to each other. That doesn't make any sense. I don't know what the point of all that is. And I thought it was the right thing to do. Unfortunately, it isn't always the right thing to do, because some people don't know how to communicate some people who communicate a certain way online, it's actually how they really are in real life too. Yeah. And I heard something in a TV show that really nailed it for me. It said, sometimes you shouldn't appeal to a man's better nature, because you might find out that he doesn't have one. Yeah. And that's kind of what happened with me. I was like, well, I'll go appeal to this person's better nature. Surely this is just the poison of being online, the trolling, the compulsion to troll. No, that actually was the real person. And so it all kind of blew up. It went totally the wrong direction. And so I was like, wow, so sometimes you can't have discourse online or in face to face. It doesn't make a difference. Or in, like, I've noticed in my own life, like, there's people that are not okay with me on social media, the things that I say and do. Really? They would feel more comfortable and prefer if I would just shut up. Yeah. They know me in real life, and they know the good and the bad, and they know my personality, and they know my quirks, and it makes them uncomfortable. People that I thought were really good friends for many, many years, who I almost felt like I had to apologize for showing up in that way, because it made them uncomfortable. They weren't used to it. They didn't like it. They don't, whatever. I see, yeah. And what I've realized is, if someone who you have a relationship with out in the real world, right? Yeah.
if they are always giving you feedback about what you're saying in this one small little area of who you are, social media, it's not, and the feedback makes you feel like crap about yourself, then are they your friend in the first place?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah, that's actually very well put, because that's kind of what I had to discover.
Yeah.
The blessing, the silver lining out of a negative situation was the actual revelation of truth, which was that a person that I thought, that I really truly believed in my heart was a friend, actually wasn't at all, and I just didn't know, but that situation revealed it for me.
Yeah.
Which actually was good, because then it gave me knowledge. Now I know how to navigate that and go,
Right.
oh, well, this is somebody that doesn't need to be in my life.
Right.
Which, you can kind of pluck that out of your skin at that point and say, okay, well, now I know what it is, at least the face of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man,
Yeah, we had a good conversation.
this is a good conversation. I hope somebody gets something out
Me
of it.
too.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And I love you just as well.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Find the Good News. If you would like to advertise on this show or sponsor an episode, just visit findthegood.news. Send me a message and we'll see about getting your business, organization, service, product, or event on the show. I deeply thank each of you again for supporting this podcast.